Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Hotline League. I'm sorry if I'm peeking. We spent a lot of time beforehand trying to work on the audio. Let me know in the comments if I'm peeking. But it's a really exciting episode because we've got a great guest, and we've got an exciting thing to talk about, which is the finals have happened, and we can discuss all that. And by finals, I mean the NACL finals, baby, which happened yesterday.
Yeah.
That's why. That's why this show is. This episode is a day late because out of respect for the NACL finals and Cubby's inability to be on the show at the same time as he's on NACL finals, we're doing the show on Tuesday. Also, in honor of the fact that normally we travel for finals and we would always do the show on Tuesday because we'd be traveling back on Monday. So this is like in remembrance of the road shows that were, you know? Anyway, we're going to talk about some fun stuff on this week's episode. But let me introduce Cubby, my co-host. Cubby, how's it going?
Great. I appreciate you delaying the show for me. As of course I was on NACL finals yesterday, and if anyone came out the studio, I do want to give shout outs actually to all the pro players that I saw that came out and supported Tier 2. Specifically posted a photo of APA on stage, giving Maryville, some back rubs before their finals, and he was backstage with them. Also, shout out to FlyQuest, who had 4 out of 5 people come despite, taking a loss. And then shout outs to Dokla, Tomo, Meech, Winnie, and a lot of other pros that were in the audience.
Who was the one FlyQuest player that didn't come?
I was working, Travis, so I'm not gonna name names. But
who were the 4 FlyQuest players that did come?
I know Busio and Masu were both there because. We had 3 of the most valuable prospects in the audience, and Mir is competing in a league that is not in NA. So,
did you see Inspired there?
Yes, I did. Yeah, it was great.
Did you see Bwipo there?
Honestly, I didn't see Bwipo or Jensen, but I know 4 out of 5 were there. Okay. So that's all I heard. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm glad you had a good time. How did it compare to LCS finals?
A little bit emptier. But it was a lot more one-sided too. It was kind of, we got our expected result, whereas I think LCS got an unexpected result. And yeah, it was I don't know. It was a little bit more of a one-sided affair than I expected. So, but it was fun. I mean, I had a lot of fun at LCS finals too. I got to talk to a lot of folks, which I always enjoy. And yeah, I mean, weekends like this kind of remind me this is a fun job to have, so. I had a lot of fun after this weekend.
Yeah. Well, our guest this episode is none other than Emily Rand, who normally has a conflict on Monday nights, but one of the wonderful things about us doing this on Tuesday means that Emily can join us. How's it going, Emily?
I'm doing well. I have been, watching some LPL playoffs in addition to, obviously, LEC was on this morning. You know me, I don't like to sleep, and I like to watch a lot of League of Legends. But finals is really great. I guess the person I would shout out the most is actually Sven. It's amazing having him on the desk. Yeah. He's just a great, even back when I was a journalist, I would interview him a lot, regardless of what team he was on. Just because he was so easy to talk to, and if I wasn't doing a video interview, I could just literally talk to him about the game for a while before even warming up to the questions I kind of felt like I had to ask or wanted to ask more for what the people would want, I guess. And he's, he's so smart about the game, and he's always just a great person to talk to. So it was really great.
Yeah, I hope he doesn't find a team. Because I'm enjoying him as a content person so much. I'm just rooting against him.
It's one of the things where, I would love to have him on the desk. I would welcome him on the desk. I know for him what he wants is to be on the team. So I want him to do whatever he wants, which is to find a team. So and also I think he will. I think he's a very skilled player as well. So.
Oh yeah, you already hearing about Sven Berserker reunion? Is that what you're hinting at, Emily?
No, it's not.
I will talk. I mean, 1, I want to be clear that's just a joke. But 2, I think obviously we'll talk a little bit about the C9 stuff in light of last Saturday, and I feel like that is going to be, if it's not already on the C9 subreddit as a demand, I assume it's going to be soon. But yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. How was the split overall for you? I know I saw your email posting about casting not being where you want it to be, but was it otherwise a good split?
A good split even with that. Like, it's just more like and the only thing I can really compare this to is painting, because for people that don't know, I was a double major. So journalism, obviously, I think people do know that, but then also fine arts. And my concentration was oil painting. And one thing that whenever you're learning like a new skill, or like specifically, it happens a ton in art. It's also happened to me in League of Legends before too, like playing the game. You get to a point where you're like, oh man, like I'm improving. And then you get to this point where you realize how much you are shit. And you're very well aware of it, but you also cannot improve fast enough
what is
to
that? That's
be
the
able
curve,
to overcome
the confidence curve. What's it called? I can't remember, but I know.
No, I know what you're talking about. I can't think of it, but
Yeah.
like I've encountered it in playing the game. I've encountered it in oil painting specifically as like my number one thing, because there were actually a lot of peaks and valleys for me in terms of getting to a point where I could actually like put on a gallery show and feel not weird about inviting people, which was what my senior thesis was for my art major. So yeah, I think that was more of the post. Like the maudlin part is just whenever a season wraps up, I always feel kind of a sense of melancholy, because like, oh, next week I'm not going to be going to the studio and doing my normal job, right? And that's always kind of sad. But in terms of obviously this split, I started casting. I think I'm all right. I have a laundry list of things I need to work on. But that's not a bad place to be, right? It's just like I guess I didn't mean it to come across as depressed as it did apparently, but it's more like I'm more than well aware of like the things I have to work on. And it's just a frustrating state to be, but that's not a bad state to be, right? Because you can hone in on certain things and kind of, I like when there are actionable items that I can work on as a person. Like I'm a very logical, like straightforward person. And when I receive good feedback, which I have all split, by the way, my peers are amazing giving me feedback. I have a list of actionable things that I can now take forward into summer, which is really nice.
Yeah. Shout out to Raz, by the way, yesterday, who was also helping us with feedback, even like live on the show.
Raz is great. Which is very common. Oh my god, he's so good. Yeah,
you say that Raz gives me a lot of unsolicited feedback. The amount of times where
Travis, maybe you should
like about audio.
No. No, he like that's usually when he messages me. I'm looking at our history right now, and DMs and Discord, and it's just stories like, hey, by the way, Travis, I was watching this interview, and you fucking idiot, you forgot about this thing that we did on the broadcast, and you see, even in chat he goes, true, ha 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 ha. It's anyway. Yeah, no, I hear you though. It is nice to. It is actually, that is one of the things I miss about working at Yahoo Esports, was being surrounded by a team where we could all kind of like level each other up. Yeah. So.
Great. Yahoo Esports is great.
Yeah. Throwback.
Pour one out.
All right. So, let's see. One, I want to shout out you all as our sponsors for this episode. This is normally where I'd shout out sponsors. I don't have that. So if you have a Prime sub, or you just feel, actually, you know what? For years, I have just said Prime sub. I will say, if you have a couple bucks and you want to support, feel free to normal sub too, or over on YouTube, become a member. It's a really great way to support. I also sometimes see people just hit my link tree. Last week I was on a hike, and somebody sent me through my link tree $10. And that was great, because I literally went and spent that on a salad right after the hike. So I appreciate the support from all of you. Also, because we don't have a sponsor, I'm just going to be, this is something I could not have gotten away with when Mark was on the show, but I'll let everybody know. I will be at Command Fest in San Francisco in 3 weeks, the weekend of 420. hashtag Blaze It. I will be in San Francisco at Command Fest, which is not just about Commander. They also have a bunch of non-Commander stuff going on there. But if anybody wants to come play Magic with me, I always have a really good time doing that type of stuff. And it's really cool because when I go to league events, I don't have the time because I'm working, so I can't really spend time with folks. But it's actually really fun to just like slam games of Commander and stuff with people. If anybody wants to come play Magic, go look up Command Fest San Francisco. Other than that, I've got some cool interviews coming out. Go check them out. You can they're up right now for YouTube members. You can go see them all right now if you're a YouTube member. All right. What have you been up to, Cubby? We talked about Emily and I. I know you said a little bit about what you've been watching lately. You said you got bored of it, but anything else?
Yeah. Not really. I have something that will be keeping me busy in the off season. That I can talk about, like outside of casting, there's kind of like Emily was talking about, right? Like we have a break, and it is nice for like the first week where you're like, wow, I don't have to, I can have some time to myself. And then after that, I'm just bored out of my goddamn mind. So, I had some stuff to keep me busy, but no, not really. Yeah, I'm just, it was really just like, it's like the end of the sprint, and honestly, I'm really excited to catch up on a lot of odds because LCS was done early compared to the other regions,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of fun now, like watching the other playoffs, minus the fact that I have to like remember that Azir exists in the game. So,
Cubby,
yeah,
did you watch DK versus KT?
I did, Emily. It was everything that you would expect from that series.
I called it. Me and Jonah Strong, man, we were right. We were right.
The best part about the Jonah Strong graphic too was the fact that he was the only one that predicted DK on that graphic. And so
I was actually really surprised by that. Yeah.
He just continues to be the GOAT. I mean, if you didn't watch any LCK, but you know of LCK and past results, that series went exactly the way you thought that series would go. That's really all there is to it.
It was so bad. There were so many things about that. They were so cursed.
Yeah, it really was. Like okay, so the Rumble game, I swear if that they don't roll Hextech Soul, I think they lose. Like, and DK would have won even faster. And like the Rumble just like bounces back. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was wild. There's just so many things about that series. It was just absolutely ridiculous.
Well, we're talking about North American League of Legends here on this channel. All right. So that's what we're gonna do.
I did ask for LCK or LPL takes.
No, what are you doing? Cubby has explicit rules not to do that.
So Cubby's just not gonna pull them. I got it.
Cubby's gonna censor you. All right. Whatever. It's been we're goofing around at the start of this. It's because I'm in a good mood, and I feel like coming off finals was really fun. But
it was fun.
All right, let's spend just a couple minutes here talking about this past weekend. Obviously, well, okay. I'll ask this: how surprised were both of you about TL pulling it
out? Very. I guess. Yeah. What were your thoughts, Emily?
Oh no, I mean you can go first because I know you can't see me because I'm not on the camera. I was really surprised. Anyone who looked at the prediction graphic at all, I did expect TL to beat C9. I didn't expect it to go as one-sided as it did, but then with TL versus Fly, I did see it as two teams that like to play somewhat similarly. I think it's a little different. There are nuances that should be pointed out, but like the fact that, and I brought this up on Desk, but like even the game that FlyQuest won, it still felt like TL were very much in that game, right? And it just broke FlyQuest's way. And like obviously that's not necessarily what happened in terms of analysis, but in terms of the way the game felt, that's how it felt, right? It definitely felt like on the day, Team Liquid just had a much stronger read. I was very surprised at how seemingly uncomfortable that FlyQuest were with taking Senna. And that was kind of made apparent from their game 1 draft, but then obviously was kind of a thing that was hanging over the rest of the series in terms of being able to do like a Senna Smolder trade or trade for Varus, which obviously Team Liquid were like very, very comfortable doing. So that was kind of a thing that was very easily noticeable in draft. But then, yeah, I was still really surprised because I thought that TL were still, despite their focus on, like, they are a very macro oriented team. In more than a few of their series, C9 and 100 Thieves specifically, I cited them as a team with a much better read on the map and better map awareness. However, I still did not expect them to beat FlyQuest.
And APA in the chat right now is very offended by the fact that people have said they were very surprised that Team Liquid won. What I'm very surprised is that APA is in the chat, because I messaged Dodo yesterday, when we've always heard about Dodo and Discord conversations. But I messaged Dodo at 1:53 p.m. yesterday. I said, any TL players interested in coming on the show tomorrow at 7? We have Emily on as a guest, but would love TL presence as well. And he said, let me ask. And then he said, we actually have a full day shoot tomorrow with everyone, so I don't think it's possible. Sorry about that. So I'm surprised that APA is in the chat right now, because my understanding was APA was going to be busy. And so I thought we could speak candidly here without him coming in to crush us. But
I will say 10 to 6:30 shoot is what he's saying in chat. That's a lot. That's a
Long,
long gamer day. That's
a long gamer day.
Not long enough to stop him from yapping in my Twitch chat. All right. Anyway,
I love that he's here.
Cubby, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Looking back throughout this playoffs, I've like really kind of been thinking recently just about like what it is to, compete in this game. And I think that there were so many days in this playoff where I feel like it was very clear that one team was ready to play on the day and another one was not. I think back even to C900 Thieves. I think back to both Saturday and Sunday this past weekend. I think one of the really unique things about like basketball is the fact that you get 7 different days in the playoffs to try and win 4 games, right? You get 1 day to win 3 games. And I think that was like actually like really significant, because it's so weird to me that with FlyQuest, I think one of just like if I had to like boilerplate down like some things that happened on the series, the 3 games they lost, they were playing champs, they didn't play for the entire season, right? I know we had a short 14 game season that people like kind of complain about, but like that's such a random stat to have in a final, along with a missed ban. When I was going through my tape, Emily, I'm sure you would have seen the same thing. I was saying that, wow, Yawn is so comfortable in the Varus Kalista matchup on both sides. For me, I felt like this was something that was really core to TL throughout these playoffs, and they just opted into like taking that the entire time. Busio did not show up on the day, and when he was off Nautilus, he looked like very lost. Game 1, like I feel like FlyQuest just saw that a Smolder was going to get the first Drake and lost their shit through the entire game, and any chance they had.
Oh god, that first Drake fight was rough.
Well, Busio's base got delayed twice, and they're just like, oh, we cannot give Smolder a first Drake on stage, and then they just threw the game for it. Like when the map was not there, they could have like taken Krubs and worked their way back to probably set up a bot dive, because Inspire would have been ahead in jungle. And they literally just threw the entire game, taking a fight they had no business taking, which was just ridiculous. Like, and that game was just brutal. I don't know. Like, it was so weird just to like. I think back to so many days in playoffs, and it really just sometimes is like, who can show up on the day? And the best series of all time, like when you get both teams to show up. But I can think of many series where it's like, wow, like where were they? And that's something where I felt like that was really apparent on like this playoff bracket. Looking back through, it was really weird.
Just a quick shout out to John, who over on YouTube just hit me with a $100 super chat. It was cool to see you in person last weekend. Didn't get a chance to say hi to Travis, but at least was able to say hello to Kobe. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to see you. That's heartbreaking, especially given how generous you are. That's the highest super chat I think I've ever gotten on YouTube. So thank you. That is very, very generous. You're just crushing Twitch right now. These Twitch folks don't even know what they're doing. All right. Let's get into some calls, shall we? Cubby, do you want to go grab our first caller? Actually, do you want to say Do you want to say this? I know we've got like four folks in the tank. But
we've got a crap ton of callers today, which is fun. But if you want to join and throw your takes to the Discord, discord.gg/Travis, or also if you were in Twitch or YouTube, the command for Discord should work. Join, tag me, drop your take. If it's good, I'll drop you in waiting room, and then we'll go pull you one by one. You have a chance to talk with the great and powerful Emily Rand, along with Travis, about the last weekend of LCS that we have for a while. And then we have to just go off of boring off-season rumors to sustain ourselves in this off-season, content winter, Travis, until we hit MSI.
No, I've actually been talking to a couple people. I think we have some.
Oh yeah.
No promises, but I think we're going to try to do some fun shows.
Let's go.
Think that Mark and I were talking about trying to get him back on to talk about sort of like a retrospective, because he's already tweeted he's planning on putting something out, so I think that would be a good time to get him on. So I'm trying to think of ways to make sure that this is an exciting, because we do have a month, but I think we'll come up with some cool stuff. So, but yeah.
Sounds great.
And if you are a sub, first off, thank you for being a sub. If you're a YouTube member, thank you for being a YouTube member. Make sure you link both of those to Discord, and you can put your takes into the subtopics chat, which doesn't guarantee you a spot on the show, but it does move a little slower, so it's easier for Cubby to catch. But yeah. All right. I see Cubby has already left to the waiting room. Emily and I chilling. She's in her hot tub.
This was such a fun day, honestly.
Yeah. It's a good picture. Why did you were looking at pictures earlier? You didn't like this one?
I just have very few pictures of myself.
Okay.
That's all.
There's an entire Flickr that has a ton of pictures of you and all the other casters that always go to. Players when they need something. Yeah, just to give you, a little bit of anxiety. All right, here we go. First caller is here. Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from?
It's Lymyion, and I'm calling from St. Louis. You guys actually pulled me last week, except I have a dumber take this time.
Oh, boy. Lymyion from St. Louis. What do you want to talk about on the show?
Yeah, my take, and it is insane, is that Team Liquid, this Team Liquid that won, is simultaneously the worst team to have won the LCS and also the best team that we will send internationally.
All right. Why don't you elaborate?
No, I think I'll leave it there. It makes me sound
No, go for it.
I mean, I want to first say that I think it's mainly based relative strength. Like, if you compare this team to, like, the C9 that won, like, 2013, 2014 or whatever, I think they beat them 10 games out of 10. So, just keeping that in mind, I sort of mean relative to the strength of the field, they're weaker. Like, I mean, I could go player by player, right? But obviously, I have a whole lot of faith in people like Impact and Core JJ and stuff, and APA. I do want to say Team Liquid's my favorite team, and I'm so excited that they won. So it sounds like I'm shitting on them, but I just think that a lot of things worked out for them, in ways that made it. I don't want to say easier because that discredits it. Obviously, there was a lot of skill, and obviously they were smashing everybody. But I do think that there were things that worked in their favor that haven't necessarily happened in previous LCS things.
All right. So, like what?
So, I mean, I don't know how much this impact. I mean, one thing is maybe venue stuff. I think that's a cop out. I don't know how much that impacts nerves in terms of like Ion and APA.
Yeah, don't give me the cop outs. Give me the real shit. What is this magical series of events that took place that let Team Liquid cheese their finals win?
Well, I think the big one is, without getting too much into details, right, is that the drafts were just not good. And I know that a lot of people have been talking about how FlyQuest lost their strategic coach and the impact that would have. I think, from my point of view, it did seem like drafting was thrown off in ways that it wasn't in the past. Maybe I wasn't watching too closely to FlyQuest's other series, but I do feel like the drafting strategy was just weird, right? And I think that was probably the number one advantage that Team Liquid had. Missing a ban, and just it seemed sort of up in the air, right? Yeah, I think that's the biggest one.
Do you have a quick second biggest one? Just because would you say things worked out for them, and then we only have drafts were weird. I'm trying to help you because I want your take to inspire conversation, And
well, I do think that there's two parts to the take, right?
Okay.
And the first, I mean, the first half is like, I think drafts were off.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much all I can think of off the top of my head.
All right.
Right.
All right.
I mean,
All
most
right.
of my focus is on the second half, but
All right. Yeah. What do you mean by best team?
actually, wait. I also forget the Azir ban, and I feel like I'm kind of a broken record at this point. I think a lot of this has been a point of discussion in the past, so I don't know how much we should go over it now. But like the global Azir ban, I think was definitely beneficial to Team Liquid. Not that APA can't play it. I've been watching a lot of APA streams, and he was grinding it in Korea a lot. But I don't think he's necessarily as good at it as he is his other champions, right? I think he might be there by the time international rolls around, but I don't think he's there yet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would just want to congratulate APA on being LeBron because, people are going to use this as like the bubble monkey bowl, that he won NBA finals in the bubble. It's going to be an asterisk because this year was banned. So congrats APA on having a direct comparison to the GOAT from this.
Sure.
That's fantastic.
By the way, I do want to say I see your chat is roasting me a lot, and I completely get it.
Callers should never look at the chat.
Oh, it's fine. I don't have any shame. I walk around making myself sound stupid all the time. But I do think the second half though is, internationally, right? This is mental gymnastics that I'm getting into now, but I think that the playstyle that TL is playing, with him being much more aggressive, and the champion pool stuff, especially as APA has leveled up a shit ton, actually is going to play into their advantage in a way that hasn't really worked, or hasn't. How am I trying to say this? When North America's sent teams in the past, right? I think the times that we've gotten some of our best wins are when we were able to kind of mess up the draft. I think about IG 2019, right? And the Skarner was kind of a weird pick. That just stands out to me, or the Nico top. I don't really remember the meta at the time, but I don't remember a lot of people playing that. And I think that that's just going to play to their advantage better than any NA team in the past trying to go there and meet the meta and lose out that way, right?
Sure. All right, so let's dive in. Let's take the first or part one of this take, which is TL the worst team to ever win LCS? Emily, what do you think?
First off, I thought FlyQuest said that was NRG, or was that just me?
Oh yeah, I mean
Yeah.
for what?
Okay.
I mean, I'm pretty sure multiple FlyQuest players said it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, that math doesn't add up.
And I feel like the C9 players last year also felt like they were supposed to have won that or whatever. So yeah, NRG was definitely a team that was disrespected following their win. But I don't know, Emily, what do you think of that? The overall strength of TL.
I mean, so obviously, the caller kind of covered this, but we're making the assumption that we're looking at it in context of the LCS and not like how much we've learned about the game since 2013.
Sure.
Because obviously then it is like, I would say objectively untrue. In terms of they're the worst team, it seems like you are thinking of like players on an individual level, rather than like the team's approach and play style. Is that correct? Caller?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to at least that's what my mindset was. That.
I'm just asking for clarification because there's one thing that I actually think is very untrue because and I don't know if Cubby agrees with this, but I said this on desk several times. I actually thought C9's like map awareness, some of their lane assignments, and their approach to objectives were some of the best in the LCS, in playoffs specifically. So I want to make sure it's not in terms of like you are just looking at the individuals separate from each other on paper.
I mean, I would almost argue. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm looking a lot at like regular season performance, right? As well, and I do think individually, I don't know.
Okay, so let's.
Yeah, I'm only saying this because, like, sorry, I'm really not trying to be mean. I'm actually just trying to ask for clarification. Because I think, like, a lot of the things you brought up, like, for example, the Azir global ban benefiting them, I think that's true. I also think it's kind of weird that other NA teams didn't jump on ASOL because, and I said this in another show this morning, I think ASOL is fucking broken.
It is.
And I think that NA have a weird disrespect for APA, who is the primary ASOL player, where they're just like, oh, well, APA plays ASOL, and he is an ASOL Ziggs 2-trick, so we're not going to play it. And, like, I don't know if that's true, but that's the sentiment I've seen from the NA community, which I also think is false, because, again, like I said, I think ASOL is broken. We just saw it in LPL last night. We've seen it also played in LCK. Caps played it in LEC. So I think that's already factually untrue. But I want to make sure, like, because you mentioned the gold ban, I do think they benefit from it. I also think, like, I don't like necessarily calling teams out for benefiting from the way that a meta falls. If they then have to deal with Azir being heavily in the meta, which it looks like he probably will, because teams like Azir, he has a lot of things that he does that are really good for a lot of different compositions. So as long as he's viable, he's always kind of going to be around because you can build multiple compositions around him. That's something that they'll have to deal with at MSI, right? Like, if it is a problem, if they're benefiting from it, like any other team, as the meta shifts, they're going to have to adjust. And that's not something that's unique to Team Liquid. If you're talking about the players on the roster, I'd have to go back and look, but I would hesitate to call a team with Impact and Core JJ, despite the fact that Core, I think, did have a very down regular season. I think he only really looked particularly good in flashes and playoffs. I still think that that's a little bit specious in my opinion, but again, I'd have to go back and compare, like, every single roster, and that would take a lot of time.
I still think NRG is probably the worst winner. Like, if you look at the resumes of that team, and like just the era, like being that late into league, that was probably the biggest disparity of like typical results, right? If like we're just gonna look strictly at where they placed. And keep in mind, they also were 50-50 in the regular season, too. Whereas, I mean, this TL has 2 world champions on it, and regardless of, like, what year it is, I mean, Core and Impact both did really show up this playoff, right? So, I kind of have trouble saying that they're the worst team. And also, I will say that, like, on the back half, like, being a good team to send to MSI, I mean, I think this team played rather disciplined on map as a Core 3. Like, they took T1 decently close in at least like portions of the game. They had a poor Worlds run, but I think that the members that like were the youngest have grown and improved, and I think the pieces they put around this team are stronger. And I've been watching LEC playoffs, and that gameplay has been pretty disgusting. So I'm actually pretty excited for NA going to MSI. I think we actually have a chance to, like, you know, be the 3rd best region and, you know, take the bronze medal.
To continue to be the 3rd best region.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so one, I definitely think that TL leveled up a ton over the course of playoffs. I mean, you saw it in Yon and APA, who were 2 players that the Team Liquid subreddit wanted to, like, murder halfway through the split, despite the fact that they were both fairly young players, especially in the case of APA. So I really, like, I think it's weird to say it is a difficult argument for me to accept that we need to rate any team's performance in the finals based off of their split long, like multiple months long journey to get there, in terms as if that is like the sole level of their strength. I think there are a lot of times where teams that just get built, especially in spring, take a while to figure stuff out. And so I guess I just disagree a lot with that. I think the other thing is, the way that they play the game is just so fucking exciting. As a guy who's been covering LCS for so long and remembers just a couple of years ago when Team Liquid was the like do nothing, win one team fight, win thing. And it's not like their gameplay was like as proactive at the beginning of the split either. And so getting to see this team level up to the point where they just like are turning all their games super bloody and taking all these fights and all that stuff, I love it. And so I just really struggle with the idea that this is like the worst team to ever win LCS. It's also just like it's such a like phrases like that. I feel are ways to just find negativity in everything. It's like a team wins. Well, yeah, but they're like the worst winner of all time. It's just that type of philosophy is also just kind of annoying to me.
Can I say one thing to defend myself?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, would it make more sense if I said like they are the biggest underdogs to have won an LCS?
Maybe, but I feel like there are some pretty long, like some teams that went. Like, actually, I was talking to Nero about this recently, or on the day. There's like a ton of teams recently who had very middling results in the regular season and then ended up lifting a trophy at the end of it. So, I think it's been like quite frankly like a trend for a bit now. So, I don't know. I think it's kind of reach. But I do want to spend more time on the best team to send internationally. I think for all the reasons I was just talking about there, where I got really excited about watching them play, and I think that they're pretty good, I think those are the reasons I am excited to watch them. I mean, I think that for many LCS fans, and this has not always been the case, I think NRG was pretty proactive last Worlds, for instance, but there's been a lot of times where I have been in another country and I have been sitting there in the audience or in the press room, and I'm just watching our North American teams bleed out. They do nothing. They just slowly get caught out in the certain places. They lose objectives, and then, 15 minutes in, you're like, wow, there's like no deaths or no kills on our team, and they've just like slowly died. And so I do agree with you a lot on the premise that this is like a really exciting team to send internationally. I think my hope is that they maintain this level of aggression, because I think that we have seen it before where we send teams that we think are fairly proactive, and then they go into the hyperbolic time chamber of scrims and, getting wrecked by players from other regions, and then you finally see them pop out in group stage or in planes or something, and you're like, what happened these last couple of months,
Yeah.
But I assuming they can maintain the level of confidence and proactivity that we've seen over the course of playoffs, I am very excited to see this team go internationally.
I also think that like a team with with Spawn leading as well, if that team that team's never going to bleed out. Like, this team would rather have so many terrible things happen to them before they like bleed out in a game. Like that's just not going to happen. So they'd rather get smashed in 5 minutes than bleed out. I do kind of appreciate that about this team too.
Yeah. Emily, anything you want to add to this? I don't feel obligated to, but if you have anything you want to say about them, their chances internationally.
No, I think I pretty much said what I was going to say. I do think I am very curious to see where the meta breaks. Because right now with crit items coming back into fashion, if anyone's been again paying attention to other regions, I see the meta being very different than the one that TL qualified on. So I think that's something that people need to keep in mind, not as a bad thing, but just as a like, I assume they'll go to Korea, they'll boot camp, and we'll see how that meta ends up breaking in terms of going into the actual play in Chengdu.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Hey, caller, thank you so much. I'm sorry if you got flamed by Twitch chat. It's a constant. You don't need to worry about it too much. And at the very least, it did allow us to talk a lot about Team Liquid and both their path to finals and their chances internationally. So I appreciate the framing of your take. Anything you want to shout out here, though?
Yeah, just wanted to say, I don't mind coming on here and not being able to defend it. But also, I am actually a huge TL fan. As much as I was negative at the first half, I do really believe in the second half. And I think that they've improved a lot, and I'm just excited to see them go international. Anyway, that's all. Shout out to TL. And also, Emily, the broadcast has been awesome, and I think it's been really pleasurable to watch you talk about, League of Legends. I think it's been really interesting and fun to watch. So,
thanks so much. Catch you next time.
Thank you.
See you.
All right. We are head on to the next caller. While we do that, thank you to Zemelkai for 3 years. Spetty Spaghetti, Heartroon, Zaseshi, Bonzon, Carpezi for 1 year, Crazy Legs, Steve for 3 years, Green Falv for 33 months, Papire, Prophet Guru, Ian7J2, Swede, who gifted a couple subs. And then over on YouTube, thank you to Brian, Dew, Husky, and Poison Ivy for all becoming members. 504 Caesar for the $4.99, and then Matthew Jackson, thanks for the membership. And again, shout out to John for that 100 super chat. We've got some more folks. I'll shout them out in a second, but we have none other than David on the show. David, where are you calling from?
What's up, brother? Calling from Jersey City, New Jersey.
What's your take?
That the LCS Finals should never, ever, ever be in the Riot Games Arena ever again.
All right. Go ahead and break it down.
I mean, you already know most of these points. You made a whole video on it about how even if you were going to keep it in LA, you could do it in little areas besides the Riot Games Arena to at least give it a fresh feel. You don't have to go to these massive 10,000 seat arenas because we're not going to sell that out anymore. But even something like a 2,500 to 3,000 seat place should be more than fine. I don't care what we have to do to downscale cost to make sure that we get out there anymore, but I cannot bear to see another finals in the same place that we played every single regular season game and every playoff game, and it just not feel different. Like, I'm trying to do as much as I can here on the East Coast and give us watch parties in different venues than we normally do to make it feel different, but like, there's got to be more done here. I mean, come on.
So let me preface this by saying that, because one thing I have realized over the course of this past couple months is that a lot of us sort of rag on the LCS for a lot of the issues that they are facing, and it can be very demoralizing to the people who are at the LCS arena who are like, okay, we have this constraint. How can we have to do finals in the arena. How can we do the best job of that? And honestly, I think given that constraint, I am really happy with the people who put on that show for that, like, finding this level of success with these constraints. I want to acknowledge that because I think sometimes we can just sort of shit on these things, and like there are a lot of people who worked really hard to do some really cool things. I thought that the opening ceremony was neat, that they found those guys to come in and do the Rise performance. I thought that was well crafted and all that stuff. The outdoor area was a nice setup, even if they didn't have enough people to really support a lot of the experience there from a fan perspective. But I mean, I completely agree with you. Like I'm sitting in the same little press box that I'm in every week, and I am watching, the team lift the trophy, and there's like the little sparkles coming down in the background, and I'm just like, this does not, it feels like Lock-In did a couple of years ago. It just does not have the gravity. And I was thinking a lot about Steve, who ran out and was really excited to finally lift, the trophy again after it had been many years, and people were like, OTL can't win without double lift, and this guy has tried a lot of different things, all of which I agree with, in order to try to get this trophy. And he finally goes out there, and then he's just on like this little stage. Peter Guber, who is a billionaire, but also is he is a chairman of Golden State Warriors, but despite that was more with Axiomatic, which is the Team Liquid parent company. Mm-hmm. He was there. I saw him in the audience. And sponsors were there as well all weekend. And I got to tell you, like, I don't feel like these people are probably excited about the money that they are spending in the ecosystem whenever this is the finals. So, yeah, I mean, happy with the teams that were able to build this based off of the constraint, but pretty disappointed that this was the constraint that those folks had to deal with, I guess is the way that I'll put it.
Yeah. And I will talk about like a couple of the positives. I got to talk with some folks that I don't think I would have found in an arena. So like I've been casting Busio since, I interviewed the kid when he was 16. and so like I got to talk with his parents, and that would have been pretty hard to do if that's in a full arena. Like that was cool, and definitely one of the highlights for me this weekend was kind of visiting with them. But I mean, one of my favorite parts about these events and like what to do is I just like talking with folks like, hey, where'd you come from? Like, where'd you travel from to actually go pull this off? And I didn't talk with a lot of people who were out of towners either. And I think that with David's point, like having a road show, like I've gone to past road shows. Riot's nice enough to, even give challengers casters like tickets to go, especially in the big arenas. So it's our excuse to go out there and have some fun because usually our split's been over in the past. And like when I was in Jersey, like I heard people coming, from New York, from Buffalo, from Baltimore. Like you get people that come from all over and are really looking forward to this. And now you're attracting the same people that are likely going to the studio already in the season if they really want to, and they're just like more driven to go this time around because it's finals. So, I mean, like regardless of venue, I think that people reach and being in like person's important for that. And I'll echo what Travis said too. I feel like the only thing for me that was a little bit awkward was they had to rush TL outside to do the outdoor interview. But like besides that, I think
which was
that
the exact same interview as what they done inside.
Yeah,
it was like
yeah.
It was Jat with a stick mic, and then it was Azale with a stick mic, and I'm like, okay.
Outside of that, I felt like they did a really nice job with what was given for the broadcast. So yeah, but that was the only thing that was like really awkward.
Yeah. Also, this Emily, I know you don't do this, but I will say that it's a pet peeve of mine. The casters need to stop fucking asking everybody, how does it feel? It is the most cliche question, and it's the first thing almost all of them ask in any interview, and I feel like Jat did it. Not to call out anybody in specific.
I don't.
That's what I said. I feel like you know this, like you don't do it. But I'm saying the other
it depends. The one
casters.
time I did ask it was to you when he qualified for international, just because I know. I mean, again, I followed his career for so long. I know it was something that he like really, really, really wanted. He's been on a lot of like unfortunate teams or teams where he was kind of the like obviously he earned the nickname of the general, but I think TL is a really nice team for him because he can sometimes listen to core and impact, and it helps rein him in a bit because he can be like very, very aggressive. Anyway, like that's the only time I've asked it in recent memory. But I mean, I agree. I've already talked about this publicly. I've talked about it internally. There's nothing I can do. Big agree.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's probably a very unsatisfying answer.
No, I mean I get it. If like it's really hard when you're on the broadcast and like what else is there to say? I like one. It's funny because David called in with this, and I see some folks on the chat. They're like cold take, but I'm like, I think it is worth acknowledging after the finals. How did we feel about having it in the studio? And the assessment I have had, and like I've talked to a lot of people, is there's kind of just this like shrug moment of, yep, it was a finals. Like I don't think anyone thinks, wow, that was dog shit. Like it's not terrible, but it does not feel elevated in any way compared to if you have like a venue with a significant audience. And I don't know. I again, just to head it off at the pass, because I see, these comments all the time anytime we talk about this stuff. There's a lot of people that will come out and be like, yeah, but those days are done. You can't get a 20,000 person arena. Okay, that's fine. Find like a 3,000 person arena. Find a theater. Find a college situation. There's a lot of ways to make this thing feel elevated, and I think it is important to do so. And I think there's a lot of other ways to cut budget that they seem to not be doing. So anyway.
Yeah. I think I was going to say the only thing I'll add is that I think even in lieu of a big stadium event, one thing I do think is interesting, and I learned this more talking to fan captains in the LPL, right? Because the LPL is geolocated, and obviously you literally cannot, due to audience size, use everything that happens in the LPL as a one-to-one, we're going to take this, right? But one thing I thought was interesting in talking to them was that they were really open about the fact that obviously there are certain LPL teams that have their own home arenas. So in season, teams travel, right? And it becomes like a mini roadshow, right? So say you're an EDG fan and you live in Xi'an. Well, Xi'an is actually WE's stadium, but if EDG are coming to play WE, if you're an EDG fan, you're probably going, right? Just because it becomes its own like tiny roadshow, right? So I think if we're not doing a stadium, that could also be something that would be incredibly valuable, because even if it's not a big event, even if the actual like pomp and circumstance is very equal to what we're doing in stadium or in studio rather, I think that the act of moving and being accessible to more fans elsewhere in the US, because the US is a very large country geographically, is very valuable, because so many people I talked to since I've been on broadcast became fans through specific roadshow events once we started doing those post-COVID. And obviously I've only been on there since 2021, but I know the EG finals in Houston is the one that everyone highlights. It's like, this is when I fell in love with this player, or like, this is when I fell in love with the LCS, right? And there was actually a whole bunch of fans that came in to LCS just off of that one thing. And obviously that was also still in the stadium. However, I do think that if there's one thing that cannot be quantified well on a spreadsheet, it is that, right? It's the effect of actually traveling to someplace and making your game at the highest level of competition accessible to a different audience than what you normally get.
Yeah.
So that's all I'll add. Because like, again, like obviously my response to the stake is like, yes, and because there's nothing I can do about it.
I also really appreciate Travis's take as well. Because like, for example, so when I was in college, I co-founded the 9th varsity esports program in the nation. It's like 2016. It's very early on. The biggest thing that we did to sell our professor on it is we brought him to MLG Columbus, and he watched 2 rounds in the arena and was like, I'm in.
Yeah.
Because you could like see how big the arena was and see the effect it was having on fans, and like that hits very hard. And I appreciate how Travis is like, for sponsors, like the studio just doesn't feel the same as filling up an arena with that energy if you really don't know what's going on.
Dude, if you're MasterCard and you've signed this deal where you're going to be doing opening ceremonies, and you go from a world where your logo is associated with like the massive fucking shows that they've been putting on previously to this one, like, what are you interested in continuing to spend? You know, like, I'm not saying they need to keep doing pyrotechnics in giant arenas, but like, there are knock-on effects of this type of thing that people don't understand, and when we talk about like the financial ramifications of doing these shows, I think we also miss the financial ramifications of not doing them. So I don't know, whatever. Thanks so much, David, for the call. Anything you want to add on here before I give you your shout outs?
Yeah, 2 quick things to add on that. I want to agree with what you said, that it feels like they made the most out of the situation, but I want to make this clear that that should not be a reason to normalize this. Like, I called this back whenever the LEC made the swap to only one roadshow, that it's going to feel like absolute shit the first time they do it. And it did. And it still does every single time. But because it was good enough and there wasn't enough downside and wasn't enough public outcry, not like there's no pushback against it now. It's just kind of accepted for what it is. And I don't ever want us to get to the point where we accept finals in Riot Arena being an answer. Should never be okay. I will continue to call it out as much as I can. And the second thing is adding to the fan experience. Obviously, it's great whenever you could take people there, but even like watching from afar, I know not everybody watches the pre-show, like the hour leading up to it, but there is a lot that goes into the feeling of tuning into broadcast and knowing that it's elsewhere. Like, you see that it's the first time you're seeing a new backdrop, regardless of how big or small it is. It doesn't matter. Even if everybody's outside. I think back to like the World's Finals broadcast is like a great example where they had everybody doing the pre-show in the area outside of the arena, kind of looking at FanFest, and then merged everybody in. And it adds so much weight and gravity to the moment as a spectator, even before we get into the finals itself. And you lack that as well whenever you take all of that away. Nothing against seeing the lounge. I love watching the lounge every single time it's on, but I don't want to see it in the same spot it's been before.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, thank you so much for the call, David. Anything you want to shout out?
Just shout out to everybody that tunes into the show, everybody that supports my content, everybody that came out to the New York City watch party that we had. We had 80 total. We filled out awesome. the bar entirely, and I got an email from the general manager this morning saying they would love to have us back anytime. That's so awesome. We did a good job with making sure that the bar got their value as much as we got ours.
Nice.
Thank you for the call. Catch you next time.
See you.
All right. Off to the next caller.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Baby TK, MJ Baker, X Adam X, Real Foxy 1, 76 months, Zamelkai, thank you for the 900 bits, Zurts, Remy 41, Ryaxel, Nuclei, Melon Dog, Be Gentle Baka, and Ojai Vega. Thank you everybody for those subs over on YouTube. I see you all. Shout out to the YouTube people who always see that I don't see them. All right, we've got a caller here. Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from?
My name is Vashinomad, or just Vash is what usually people call me.
Vash.
And I'm calling from Avon, Indiana.
Indiana. What do you want to talk about on the show?
So I think fans need to, my take is fans need to commit to a team more often. And also the second half of my take is that teams need to build out a niche to make it more appealing for fans to commit to them. And if those things don't happen, no team is going to be able to build a fan base like TSM and the old things. And I do want to say, as my resume for this question, I have been a fan of Curse and TL since like Voyboy was on Akali in early LCS. I went through fourth place, Elephant on Fire, switching to Liquid, Midlet, Breaking Point, 4P, and now the current team. You know, I love my players and also the old players. I can continue now, or if you want to take.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you can give. Oh, Cubby, go ahead.
No, I mean, I was just gonna say, like, I think it's like different. Like the esports has like really been trying to answer the fan question, but I appreciated your take because as a lifetime Chicago Cubs fan and a current Chicago Bears fan, if my team won in the next few years, I'd feel so good. So I'm glad that your team won and like you've been committed to the same team because it is truly satisfying, you know, like in sports, like when your team actually is able to pick up a win, right? And I feel like with esports, like given that regionalization is a really easy way to just create lifelong fans, right? Doesn't exist in esports, and you find that a lot of people do latch on to players, given that, you know, you have players streaming their own practice, which is very unique and cool about the space. But sometimes players can get bigger than the brand, right? Or bigger than the team, I should say, and like people just follow Double Lifts wherever he went, right? I appreciate A, how you're a fan, and B, I feel like more people need to do it and just go through the pain. You know, there's something fun about the pain of being a sports fan. Well, I know Emily knows a bit too.
That's kind of what
I can't tell if you're talking about KT or Boston.
Both. Yeah, you do know.
Yeah, actually, Emily, why don't you talk a little bit about this? Because you do. It is true that, you know, I know you to be a diehard fan of these teams for a long period of time. So.
Yeah. I think. So again, to preface this, for people that don't know, the journalism I was specifically going in was sports journalism. So obviously, I've been into sports like my entire life. A lot of that comes from geolocation, which is something that, again, like I don't think works with esports for a lot of reasons. But again, I'll bring up an example I just used, right? Like, even though there are fans, obviously, in Xi'an who are going to see Team WE, which is a very legacy team. Obviously, they've had like down years recently, but like if you've been following Chinese League of Legends since the beginning, you probably love WE in some way, right? Like you remember Weishao, you remember Messiah, you remember those really old teams where their players had a demonstrable impact, not only in the development of Chinese League of Legends, but also like how the game itself was played globally. And I think it's really difficult to do that with esports now. I think it's even difficult for traditional sports to do it now. Like everything has kind of skewed away from teams unless you are, again, in the US specifically, and like I can really only talk about it from a US perspective because that's where I'm from, so that's my natural bias. You grow up in a city like I did in Boston, and my mom said she would put my feet in concrete and chuck me in the Charles River if I wasn't a Red Sox fan. Half kidding. So, and I grew up like loving the Red Sox, right? Like I went to so many games. It was so cathartic. I cried when they won their first World Series in my lifetime. I called my mom. She was crying. She called her dad, my grandfather. He was crying. It was an amazing family moment, right? But that's really difficult to create now for a lot of reasons. I think the way not just esports fandom, but traditional sports fandom has skewed. It's actually slowly moved away from teams overall and definitely more towards players, as players can go on social media, they can build their own brands, they can do a lot of things to benefit themselves specifically as like vomiting noises, like market themselves as a brand and a player, right? Outside of gameplay. And I think you see this most specifically in the NBA right now, but across a lot of different sports leagues, right? So I think even in traditional sports, there's been a slight shift. Obviously, I don't think this applies as much to something like US football, but I think it's really difficult. It's going to continue to become increasingly difficult for esports fandom not to be player focused as opposed to team focused. Because already you see a lot of people who were fans of teams or kind of fall off once the players that they really liked stop playing.
Alexis, to your point, Emily, Alexis in YouTube chat says, it's so hard to be a fan of a team when they're changing players out every split. Orgs need to define and brand themselves better. What is really the difference between Dignitas and Immortals?
I mean, that is also like a really good point, right? Because like, again, if you don't have this automatic built-in, like I grew up here / my family roots for these teams, so I was just raised and now I'm indoctrinated into rooting for these teams. I don't think esports has anything like that, and I think that has lent itself to already being very player focused, not to mention that the entire rise of streaming culture has kind of grown up alongside esports and has now surpassed it. So yeah, again, this is going to be like a really depressing answer, but like I don't disagree, but I also don't know how that happens, right? Because like and again, in the US specifically, League of Legends is not a cultural thing even, right? So like if you are getting into it, it's not like in China where you sign on and it's automatically in your QQ account and then you have net cafes you can go to. It's not like in Korea where you sign on and you have a PC bong down the road where you can play super, super cheap after you finish your homework, or lie and say you're doing your homework and then go to the PC bong anyway. Like multiple Korean players have told me their careers started. There's nothing like that in the US. It's not culturally significant in any way, which means that if you're getting into it, you're typically going to be getting into it because of a player that you saw streaming or a player you saw do something really cool. And that lends itself to already being a lot more player focused.
Yeah. Really good. Yeah, I think just to bring this back to finals, I'm really excited about this TL team. I think they have a chance of building a lot of fandom around themselves, which is something I think previous iterations of Team Liquid in the last couple of years, especially since Peter's departure, have struggled with.
Oh, how wild was that post-game interview?
100%. Jan grabbing the mic and being like, those guys talk too much shit. That was
great.
Like,
oh my God.
Yeah.
That was so good.
It was so good. Like, I love this team. And I'm excited to see them continue, and the fact that they kind of have a fuck the haters mentality. I mean, we'd already seen some of that at the start of this year when we had Jan on Hotline League, and in early February, I think it was. But they're just like they're a really great lineup of players and personalities, and they work so well. I mean, Core saying, you know, hey, if you're gonna trash talk, better be better than this guy or something. It's so good. It's so good. And
you've got that, and then Umti on the other side of the coin too, like on the same team. It's crazy.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the fact that they won Spring probably creates a little bit more stability in this roster, but it'll just be so disappointing if, like, at the end of this year, Umti is like, okay, I'm out, or Core goes to a different team, or APA gets replaced with, you know, a player from, I don't know, China or Korea or something like that. Like, it's just like, the fandom around teams, I think, is very fair. In terms of your take, caller, where you're like, fans should commit to teams, I feel like teams should give fans a reason to commit to them. And so I'm never going to blame the fans for the fact that they are not as connected to the teams when the teams, I feel like, have done such a poor job of giving fans a reason to connect to them.
Well, that was kind of the second half of my take that I was going to get to.
Okay. Yeah, go for it real quick.
So like the big thing, so I want to start with Flaming Fly about first, honestly, because they had this unique identity that I think a lot of people liked about the whole nature thing, and it feels like it's kind of fallen away, and they're just one of the win teams now. You know, they're following that same thing that every other team has always done, like, we're going to win, and that's how we're going to get fans. And, like, obviously, you got to win to get fans. But they had this unique niche, and if they had built a team like this back when they were everyone's second favorite team, because I remember everyone was like, my second favorite team is FlyQuest. If they had built a team this good back then, they would have made a ton of fans with the combination of their, like, nature and quest stuff and their good jerseys and having an actual good competitive team. I think they could have actually done it. And you have a lot of teams do have something that's unique about them. TL is technically the most OG org now. They could go down that route. They've had the most recent success with rookies. They could go down that route. And I feel that every team needs to find their niche and, like, start building on it. And honestly, I think, you know, Mark and the LCS in general needs to start pushing the teams to build that niche and really double down. And I know it's not something that they can just do quickly, and I know that it's a risk, but I think that if they don't start each team finding their own niche, then it's like people keep saying, what's the difference between Dignitas and Immortals? What's the difference between TL and C9? Because honestly, as a TL fan, I you know, it's hard for me to say the difference between those two teams, but TL is my team. And I mean, obviously that's my choice, but I want in the future to feel like TL is my team because they're this team. And I mean, I'm going to follow them no matter what, but it feels bad to see teams that did start to try and do unique things to just give up and now become like, I want to be the best team and win. And I hope that there becomes more pressure from either fans or the general, like, people to push teams into trying to build their own unique niche. And I hope that teams can find a way to do that, because I really feel like there is niches out there for each team. Like EG really could have gone for, like, the full evil route, and it really feels like they kind of gave up on it like after 2 weeks.
I think that they were so committed to evil that their upper management was, like, actually evil. That's kind of unfortunately, like, what happened. So, True. But I don't know. I kind of agree, but also I'm kind of ready to, like, move on to other takes. So,
regardless, I am excited about Team Liquid winning, and, like, I will just reiterate, like, how much I feel that it's really cool to see these 5 guys take off. You know,
that was fun. Yeah.
So, thanks so much, caller. Anything you want to shout out here at the end?
I want to shout out you, first of all, Travis. I've been watching your videos for basically a decade, and it's so nice to finally make it on the show. I've been a closer for 10 years, so I haven't been able to be on the show for this whole time, and I just went on day shift, so now I'm finally able to be here.
Awesome.
I also want to thank, I also want to thank Steve for, you know, letting me be a fan of his team for so long. I've absolutely loved it for so long. And finally, I want to send a shout out to APA. I want to let you know that me and my brother have been, like, we've been rooting for you this whole time. We've been fighting on the TL subreddit. I know you probably haven't been checking it out because all the flame, but we really, really wanted you and the whole team to succeed. And it's so nice to see you win. And I really hope he's still here and hears this.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the call, and we'll catch you next time. All right.
Next.
We'll take a quick break right now to shout out our sponsors, which is all of you. Really appreciate your support. Again, I see Ben just became a member over on YouTube. That type of stuff is very helpful. And even just following, myself and Cubby on social media is a great way to support the show. I've seen some folks following me over on Instagram recently, and we try to get followers on Twitter and YouTube. That type of stuff is meaningful because even if it's not a situation where you're able to maybe grab a sub on the channel or become a member on YouTube, those social following us there, that's the type of thing that does help unlock other opportunities for us, because brands and companies that want to work with us on content, all that type of stuff, they do pay attention to how active people are on social and what their following is like, what their engagement is like. So for anybody, if you are wanting to support and maybe you're not interested in doing it in any kind of monetary way, just tossing a subscription onto the YouTube channel, following on Twitch, following on Twitter or Instagram, TikTok, all these different platforms you can find us on. That type of stuff is very helpful. So thank you to all of you for sponsoring the show in your own special ways. So thanks. Cubby, you want to go grab the next caller?
Yeah, let's do it. We got some good takes coming in, actually.
Nice. I'm excited. Oh, hi, Vega. Thank you for the 21 months. Bowen, thank you for the 500 bits. Hobnobbin for 50 months. 5-0. Killer Canuck, thank you for the 5 months. Thank you, everybody, for the support. All right, we got Lord Audie here. Audie, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Queens, New York.
Queens, New York. What do you want to talk about on the show?
Okay, my take is that Bwipo and Inspired were the reason why they lost to TL. The recent comments that they made on the Pros podcast and Bwipo on Hotline League tilted their teammates. I wouldn't be surprised if Jensen, Busio, and Maso were tilted to hear that Bwipo thinks and Inspired thinks of them as bots and NPCs. I wouldn't be surprised if they make roster changes by summer.
All right. And you, what roster changes do you think? You think they'd get rid of Inspired and Bwipo?
I don't know. Maybe I don't know if it is a case that their bot lane or mid decides to just either make it either their normal or us or something like that. But I don't know. I mean, they were so high on their own forts that during those podcasts that they just started just like framing their own teammates instead of just framing their enemies. So I just don't know. I mean, it seems that they were not playing like themselves during the finals, so it might be something to do with that. Might be something to do with their coaching like conundrum, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of it.
All right. Emily, I'm going to toss this to you first.
Yeah.
Yeah? All right. So I disagree. And the reason I disagree might be kind of... I might spoil some content, some future LCS content a little bit, but basically, I don't know if people remember last year when we did C9 looking at some of their best worst plays of the split, NRG looking at some of their best worst plays of the split. But I had the pleasure, it was so fun actually, of watching FlyQuest do their best worst plays of the split this year, right? So whenever you get into an environment like that, the only reason why I'm there is to either direct the conversation if it needs to be directed and brought back to the video that they're reviewing, or if I just find something curious and I'm like, hey, what do you mean by, like, to use an example from the NRG one, what do you mean by you guys have reviewed this one play a ton of times from your coaches and they were mad at you? Like, how did that go? What was that VOD review session like, right? And I, again, had the absolute pleasure of sitting in on FlyQuest's one. And I think you would be surprised, or maybe people will be surprised, because obviously Bwipo and Inspired do, as one would expect, take the majority of the conversation, right? And the criticism. However, I will say this, Busio in particular really stands up for himself. Like, he is actually very vocal. And it didn't seem like a bad vibe at all. It seemed like they were all very used to hearing this. Like the rest of the team was very used to hearing this from Bwipo and Inspired, and they were totally fine with it. If Busio felt like he had to stand up for him and Masu, he absolutely did, and obviously felt very comfortable doing that. And it was actually like a very good vibe from them. Like I did not come out, and it was the same with the NRG one, right? Like obviously there are arguments. They did argue with each other during it, as will happen with any VOD review, but none of it was malicious. It was all very constructive. Sometimes it devolved into them making fun of each other, but there was never any actual anger or ire there, right? So that's where I would disagree, just because I do think that when something like that happens, and when the community is only able to see a slice of, for example, Bwipo Inspired on Pros, which was a really good episode, even if I would say maybe not utterly failed as a host, but definitely did not do a particularly good job directing the conversation. I think that these things are, in my opinion, very easily fixed. If say, and I don't actually think this happened, but say someone was tilted from it, I feel like you'd very easily be able to talk that out before finals. Like I actually don't think it would end up being a big deal at all. That's not the vibe I got at all from watching this team. And yeah, I guess that's it for my response.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna let all the players talk their shit. I don't really care anymore. Like I don't want to police what these guys say. Like I think it's been really fun that we've gotten really honest thoughts and reactions. Like, and that bled through to the final interview of the split, like the winners interview when those guys are up on stage. Like you get, I feel like all those guys in some way, shape, or form being themselves. And I think that's all that we can ask for as fans, and what a lot of fans have been asking for a really long time when it comes to LCS as well, you know? In terms of like will FlyQuest make changes, like why they lose? I mean, yeah, it looks bad when you talk shit and lose, but it looked really bad when APA was talking in all chat and being the worst player in the series and they played earlier on, right? Like that's fine. These guys can do what they want. And if you want to talk shit and get hit, then it be what it is, you know? In terms of changes, I don't think we're going to see FlyQuest make changes, gut feeling. I don't even want to speculate on like what they could change. I think that this team was well put together, and they did not do well on finals, but it does feel like they had a pretty good vibe as a team throughout the year. And like this does feel like a team to me that, like, I don't want to say like they're going to do damage internationally, but I don't think they're going to be terrible. I think that they're going to learn a lot, and I'm curious like how much, especially the young guys, end up learning, because like I talked to like Masu, and I'm like, hey man, like ready to go get crapped on a little bit when it comes to scrims? He's like, yeah, I'm looking forward to it, right? And that's really like all it takes coming in. So I don't know.
I was gonna say, I'll just add to that in talking to Masu both on and off camera. Mm-hmm. He seems like he's just a very eager sponge, right? Like he very much just wants to soak up a lot of things. And I have never gotten the vibe from him that he felt particularly badly about anything. Like actually, I think he's only ever expressed that, both again on and off camera, that he's pretty grateful for like everyone from Busio, his lane partner, who has a year under his belt, obviously is still very new, but it now finds himself in the senior role within that bot lane, to the significantly more experienced top side.
Mm-hmm.
I just trust players to have a better insight on what their teammates are willing to hear from them than I trust us. So like I default to thinking that if these guys are going out and saying this type of stuff in content, that they know that it's not going to affect the team environment. Because I especially because both of them have been around on teams for long enough and have had enough experience that I think, I don't know, I'm not worried about this until we hear something different, right? Like if I had heard, oh yeah, fucking Busio is just pissed at Bwipo, for saying these types of things, then I'd be a lot more worried. But most of the time, I feel like that's not, if they are saying these things publicly, it is because they know that they can do that without it affecting the team environment. So I just don't worry about it. I also don't think there'll be team changes, but Audie, I mean, I like your take because if it comes out that there are team changes and that FlyQuest fucking hated each other, then we will.
You can point to this and be like, Emily, you're so fucking wrong. And I'll be like, yeah,
I was gonna say, you be the team killer. That will be a story.
Yeah. We'll see. Either way, thanks so much, Lord Audie. Anything you want to shout out here at the end?
I want to shout out my wife to introduce me to League of Legends. I want to shout out to Emily for dousing my hot take. Thank you all. It's all good. Have a good night. Thank you all. Be safe.
Thanks. Have a good one. All right. Moving on to the next caller. Shout out to Hobnobbin for gifting 5 subs on their channel. Thank you. Iron Maiden, I think it's Prime. Weehees, Killer Canuck, and then I'm Hay for the 8 months. Thank you all. Hobnobbin, thank you for the 5 gifted. That's very generous of you. All right. Oh, and Adam Hoffer for becoming a YouTube member. That's awesome. All right, we got. Oh, do we have another caller coming in?
Yeah, I can go grab him.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Emily, do you have any plans on how you're going to spend your time? Are you going to play Final Fantasy VII? Have you already started it?
Yeah, I'm finally going to get to play Rebirth because I, haven't had as much time to play it as I would have liked. So that'll be really fun. I think after that, I'm probably going to do the full, because again, I didn't have time to do this either, but the full, remake, intermission, Rebirth, giant marathon in between looking at LPL and LCK. So that's going to be really fun. For anyone that doesn't know, I'm a huge Final Fantasy VII fan. So I'm also going home for a bit for personal reasons this weekend.
Nice.
It'll be nice to see my family. So
nice.
Good for you. That's good.
We have Mephisto here. Mephisto, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Northern California.
Northern California. What do you want to talk about on the show?
I want to talk about TL again. I know we've had a lot of TL takes already, but I just want to say that TL is the best North American team because Spawn is the GOAT.
Oh.
And I think, there we go. Yeah.
Yeah, no, go ahead and elaborate on this.
All right. So I think the thing that really stands out about Spawn to me is that he kind of fills the spot of Weldon Green, if anyone remembers who he is from 2016 TSM and stuff, in that he kind of fulfills the sports psychologist role as well as the head coach role. He of course has reign over helping him with some of the strategic stuff in League of Legends, but I think this is really important given the current situation the team is in. We've seen lots of teams kind of run into ego problems, Reaper to C9 kind of is reminiscent of that. And just given the situation TL was in, was we have this entire community bashing him. All these players are saying, "Oh my god, you guys are so trash." And just watching the trajectory of TL going from kind of a weaker team to a really strong team just goes to show that they have a really strong support staff that is actually helping the players grow. And just watching them how they play League of Legends, it actually makes sense what they're doing when they play. You can actually see they have an idea of what they're doing, which is just very rare in Western League of Legends.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate this take because I feel like Spawn has consistently been a really great coach. I was really excited to see him step into the role for the LCS team. And I think if you look at how this team has developed, especially going into and through playoffs, a lot of that is obviously the players, but is also something that I think you can usually point to the coaching staff in terms of hey, these guys got significantly better. They changed their play style. They adapted to situations. Their drafts were somehow they keep getting zigs through. It's they clearly have something going for them here with Spawn, and so I really like this take.
And I think it's just recently, TL has been releasing VOD reviews of kind of a few members on the team just going through the clips of a recent game they played. And it's just so interesting watching these because you see how comfortable these players are with each other and how they talk about things. And you can also see clear ideas that Spawn is giving these players, and it kind of helps frame how they want to play in game. And it's just really cool to see. I don't think we've really seen this with other coaches, maybe because they want to hide things, but they're just showing it out in the open, and it's really cool.
Yeah. I agree.
Emily, you want to go or do you want me to go?
You can go first because I know.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also super familiar with Spawn,
Yeah.
but you're really familiar with him from NACL.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think back to when Revenge was on here talking about Golden Glue, right? And how much like people respected Golden Glue. And what I've been starting to see as I've covered challengers a little bit longer is we have had some coaches stick around, and like the biggest compliment that I can give Spawn is that he had two very different iterations of rosters. And like the first one, to be clear, I mean, this was like his core was Armeo, Harry, Yon, Ayla. Where like if you think about that core for challengers, that's very good. Jenkins was there for the first year, and then it was Bradley for the next two. But he took that team, it was 10th, and he brought in a couple of his own guys, and they immediately were a top team in our league. Like just right off the bat, right? And I think the craziest thing for me was that, I mean, Spawn did his job. He got multiple players promoted, some on his own team. I know Ayla went elsewhere, but because Ayla was so good too, I mean, TL had a legitimate decision of like what to run, Core or Ayla. And I remember Core back then was saying that he felt like Ayla was the second best support like in the ecosystem, right? And Ayla was always the better prospect than Yon, which is kind of funny looking back now. That like, I mean, Yon has always been a hard worker and he got it to pull off. That's a different story. But Spawn then, like this past year in Challengers, got a completely different team with APA, and the only person that like had some experience on that team was really Arrow, and then Mir, of course, who came over from the Oceanic region, and he used to play with Jovi and HLE. But that team had the same identity, and they went from being a bad team in the first split to like they won a couple of games and got 9 seed in the back half, and then they made top 4 with like he took someone that was a collegiate support in Kim Down, and by the end of the year, Kim Down was the most improved player in our league. And a lot of that I feel like was because Spawn, like, I don't want to get like too into what he does, but what I really like about Spawn is like I'll reference things that he's talked about. He's there to coach you to be a better player and a better human. And I think that's very important. Like you are living and breathing this game as your job. And Spawn's there to make sure that he's going to get the most out of you. And that sometimes is stuff outside of the game. I feel like that's really important to talk about. And I appreciate that more coaches are willing to talk about that a little bit too. And the second is that he is going to work with you, but like a big thing is just accountability. He wants you to take accountability, and he wants everyone to be accountable. I won't go like into like too much, but I feel like he does a good job of like drilling things into his teams that he wants, and he will hold you accountable for it. And that's very important, especially with young teams, that they do have to kind of learn how to play as a 5-stack. And it's fun seeing, like, even with a group of vets, like, I mean, Impact and Core are legends. Umti has been around forever. AP and Yon, obviously, he's worked with. But I can still see the strict macro identity that his team was really known for in Challengers, even in LCS. Like, on my broadcast, I would talk a lot about how, in bread and butter situations, they'd have their top laner pick a tank, and they just played around Rift Herald the best. Like, they rotated around Rift Herald so well. They'd eat waves when other teams wouldn't. They'd swap their tank out. They'd be able to get like 2 crashes with Rift. They just blitz maps from that. They had the best early game and the best macro. And we can still see how good their macro is as a team on the LCS stage, right? And when you're able to do that with multiple groups as a coach, I mean, you got to look at the common factors, right? And I've seen Spawn be a common factor in this for every single team that he's been on. So, yeah, I have a lot of respect for Spawn. And I'm really glad that people are giving him praise. What I will say is I also think that some people are praising Spawn because they look at this team and they're like, I don't know how the fuck this team won. So it must be great coaching, right? And I don't want to take anything away from the players either, right? I think that is kind of a cop-out. But yes, like I have a lot of respect for Spawn. I know he was offered the position before. He didn't take it. This was his opportunity. He had the conditions that he wanted, and he made the most of it. Congrats to him. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the way he puts it is he brings out the potential of the players he has. And I think that's just something really impressive because we've seen so many rosters that did not live up to the potential. So someone able to bring out the potential is very good.
Yeah. 100%. Emily, you've known Spawn for a while.
I have.
What have you actually? I just wonder if in your conversations with players, have there been any times where you've heard anything interesting about him as a coach and his style that perhaps would lead to the success that they've had?
I think the big thing with Spawn is that the kind of to piggyback on a lot of what Cubby said, I think there are sometimes when people mistake, like they marry good game fundamentals with a playstyle. And I think Spawn is able to separate those on his team and still teach really consistent game fundamentals, like specifically objective setups, wave management, lane assignments. Like if you see, I think some of the most clever lane assignments we've seen in the LCS have actually come out of TL in some of their games. And I thought this as early as some of their games of the regular season, which is actually why TL as a team really infuriated me, because they would put together a really good game where they would like have insane lane assignments and they'd have like a really great understanding, and then the next game they'd like run it down, and I was like, okay guys, like what are we doing? I literally just saw you do this last week.
This is me literally week 5. Oh my
Yeah, I felt that too, right? Because obviously like and again, like I'm sure I've been told this comes across in my casting and my analyst desk, like my ideal world is when everyone's playing at their best and then we just see like who ends up coming out on top off that, right? And obviously that's never going to happen because people are different on the day and they make mistakes. But I think the one thing that's consistent in a Spawn team is that he teaches the same fundamentals, but he is very flexible in terms of like champion picks and kind of leaning into what his own players can be really good at and being able to pivot around that in draft. I also think it seems like on this team, at least, and one, this is from an outside perspective. I haven't heard anything about this affirmatively, or like it has not been confirmed or denied at all. This is just me like spitballing. Is that it really does seem like when push comes to shove, in a lot of cases, it really did some of the in-game stuff he could leave to Impact and Core, and occasionally UMT as well, obviously, right? Like I've said this elsewhere, but I think this is a very comfortable team for UMT because he didn't have to be the guy all the time. Like I think UMT is always going to play very similarly. I think his play style in LCS was very similar of what I've seen from him his entire career. But I also think in a lot of cases he's been asked to be the guy, right? Like whether it's a hotshot rookie who's coming in is going to be really, really good and is super hyped, or whether it's he's taking this Breon team and kind of helping guide them through and being the in-game leader of that team, right? But he doesn't have to be that on this TL team, and I think that suits him really, really well. Not that he's not making calls, but it's very obvious that he has a lot of respect for Impact and Core, and he follows their decisions a lot. And I think Spawn seems to know when he can back off. And I feel like a lot of coaches, when players end up not respecting them, it is because they end up stepping into a situation where they might not know as much about a matchup as a player, or a champion, the way the champion plays as a player. And that's the easiest way to get a player to not respect you. And I think the best coaches are very good at trusting their players enough to be able to tell them, this is what I think of this matchup, this is what I think of this matchup. If they've been a player themselves and vehemently disagree, they get in the game and play it out to see if it does play out that way. But again, I think Spawn knows when to assert his game knowledge and when he can leave it to his players. And I think that's also something that is really important, especially on a team like this, where it's players that he's either very familiar with from TLA or incredible veteran like standbys of the LCS.
Yeah. No, I think that's all very true. And I don't know. We spend so much time trying to figure out like what a good coach looks like, and in my mind, I feel like Spawn is a really good example. So,
yeah.
Mephisto, thank you so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out here?
Yeah, I really just want to shout out Team Liquid and APA in particular, because I've been watching League of Legends for a very long time, as you can probably tell based on the freaking 2017 TSM comeback. And this is the first year that I really kind of wanted to be a fan of a team, even when they weren't doing well. Like, I tend to like teams that play well, but even when TL was playing bad, I really wanted to root for them for some reason, and I kind of did. And that kind of let me join them on their journey of going up. And it was just a really great experience. So I just want to say thank you to TL for kind of changing how I view League of Legends and having a really good split overall. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for the call. Catch you next time.
I will say, Emily, you might find this fun. APA has the inverse results of the first two split that JoJo had so far. JoJo went first third, and he went third first.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, especially like given that he knocked him out twice for international.
All right, we got 2 more callers to go.
All right,
Cubby goes.
Yep.
Thank you to George Zulu for the 47 months and Leo for the 8. Appreciate all
Still
of
sad.
your support.
I appreciate all of your support too, keeping Travis in business. I was gonna say I'm really sad that you refuse to pull an LPL or LCK ticket.
Who?
I'm sorry, Emily.
It's okay. Travis does. It's not you.
The show is like,
I fully blame
Emily,
Travis.
There are so many shows where people talk about all the different regions, and Hotline Link has always been like, oh, I want this to be the LCS show, I guess, in addition to the dive or whatever, right? But like, and so we heavily focus on that until we get to international stuff. So if your schedule opens up and you're available to come right before MSI, I would love to have you around to help preview the teams and that type of stuff. But like, I don't want to spend, like, given the context of the show, it feels weird to take LPL and LCK takes after LCS
that's totally
finals.
Fair.
Are NIP gonna make it, Emily? I just want to know.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, I don't think so either.
I'm pretty sure I have them losing to FPX in my Kelsey bracket.
Ooh, that's a good one.
All right, we have a caller here. Caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Andrew. I'm calling from Little Rock, Arkansas.
Andrew from Arkansas. What do you want to talk about on the show?
My take is C9 missing MSI is bad for NA as a region.
Ooh, why is that?
So I think it starts with their preseason expectations. They had like at least 4 of their players were either the best or second best in their role, and 3 of the 5, or 4 of the 5, if you want to count Fudge too, are from NA, and Blabber and JoJo are like the best from NA that NA itself has produced. And I think C9 was like in the best position to win internationally, like at the start. And I think this, although there has been some recent success with NRG, I think the lack of international success could lead to NA players not really buying into NA as a viable region internationally. And that's kind of been reinforced by like, also the team's not really being bought into NA either, like Dig, Immortals, and Shopify, and also them all pulling out of Academy. So
I mean, I don't think Dig, Immortals, and Shopify are bought in to NA as a region already.
Yeah, true. But also most of the NA orgs besides Fly and TL pulling out of Academy doesn't really help. And then finally, I think obviously NA money is decreasing, and I think that's one of the biggest things is that NA used to be the poachers, and they might turn into the poached.
You think? Wait, somehow because C9 did make it to an international event, you think our North American talent's going to start getting poached?
Well, I think potentially because So I think JoJo had a lot of interest from both EU and LCK, and I think JoJo could be like the start of this, right? The NA doesn't really. These players don't see NA as like a way that they can actually progress into the game. So JoJo could be like the first one where he's like, all right, I'm done with this. I'm going to LCK or I'm going to LEC, something like that. And especially if he went and had success elsewhere, that like Academy players, why would they want to go to these like kind of dead orgs that aren't really invested in the region and aren't really trying to get anywhere?
I mean,
So,
I will say
what did it...
the context right now, like Fly C, there are probably 4 LCS caliber players on there, and Sajed like was a rookie and was insane this split. And I don't know if anyone's gonna make like LCS, and that's criminal. So You know, if any opportunity anywhere for like younger players, I think is great. So, you know, maybe this is good, but also how are we getting poached? I don't know. It's wild.
Well, I think the caller's doing sort of the slippery slope thing of like, well, we didn't send C9. C9 was our best chance to do well internationally based off of the caller's opinion. Then we'll continue to underperform, and if we continue to underperform, teams will be less interested, and then our players will be less committed to reach. It's like this whole, you know, doomer, like, if we have to, there's a lot of you know, pre-assumptions here, right? Which is, one,
Right.
C9 would have been our best option. Two, we won't perform internationally. C3, we, you know, not performing internationally will continue to damage the health of the league long term. But I think maybe before we get all the way down to the bottom of this, we should talk about, is it unfortunate C9 did not make it? I think yes. Like, I think C9 going like into this split, they are the super team. They were the most hyped team. People really like their players. Blabber has a great story. Like, I don't think it's good that that team sort of flopped here at the end. Like, I think for a league to be healthy, you kind of want, oh, these are like the big boys in the room, even if they're not winning the finals or something. So I think it is maybe a little unfortunate from that perspective that C9 did not make it internationally. But I'm also not convinced that like this team would do better than like our current teams. You know, clearly they wouldn't, because they weren't able to beat them. And when you talk about like international experience, I mean, there's a lot of international experience on these teams, right? Like, that we are sending. So I'm not so worried about the teams that we are sending lacking international experience compared to C9, for instance.
I would say that that's obviously I wasn't I wouldn't defend that C9, as in like their current iteration, would do better than Fly or TL. But I think, like, theoretically, like the team that was proposed, the team that we were promised in a way, was best set up to do well internationally. Because I think FlyQuest, I think it's pretty probable their bot lane's kind of going to get smashed. And I think TL, while their bot lane has done well in NA, I think it's possible that their bot lane kind of is mid when it compared to the other international teams. And I think APA could be his, like, the whole Azir thing could pop up internationally. And I think that might have to be a permaban for TL. And I think he kind of struggled in lane. And I think international teams will push that advantage in lane way harder than teams in NA were able to.
Sure. I mean, there's no doubt that the competition will be more fierce at these international events, but I don't know. I'm just not. I don't think that like the lack of C9 making it internationally is going to lead us down this terrible path. Emily, I feel like you've followed C9 for a long time. You've been somebody who was a big proponent of Berserker early on. What is your opinion on them not making it internationally?
I mean, I'm sad for the same reason that I'm sad any team doesn't do well, not because they're necessarily missing MSI, but because, like, in my head, and obviously in their head, when they looked at this roster on paper, there's a version of this roster that works together really well and does really well, and then potentially has the ability to do something internationally. As to what that something is, I mean, I am kind of down on both NA and EU pretty equally right now. But I'll say, I think the big thing with C9 not making it in terms of, like, so the part of the take in terms of we're sad maybe that they're not going internationally because they had a chance to make some waves or whatever, I feel like Fly and TL probably the same chance. If you're going with the doomer side of it, it's that NA never had a chance. If you're going with the positive side of it, it's that they have an equal shot of punching up as anyone else, including C9. I think the part of your take that is C9 is bad, like C9 not making it is bad for North America specifically. I remember people saying the same thing about the TL team that did not make it in that was beaten by 100 Thieves in playoffs, I believe. 2022 summer ? Yes, they finished 4th. I'm pretty sure I'm not trolling.
Yeah. Hans roster.
Sometimes I don't trust my own memory. But I feel like Travis and I actually got into an argument about this on our Spotify podcast.
I was getting ready to argue with you about this again. Go ahead, say what you want.
Yeah, exactly. So he was like, it's so bad that they didn't make it because of the names on this team, because of the fan base behind these players. We've talked about how important it is to have players on your org that have really big name fan bases. And obviously, this is where Travis and I vehemently disagree with each other. And maybe it's just the people I talk to. However, I think that in terms of Team Liquid winning, I've seen a lot of excitement around it. I've seen a lot of rallying around specifically Yon, APA, and Umti as the kind of 3 players that I've seen people like not even talking up a lot in terms of play, but talking up a lot in terms of, I want this person to do well, and I am invested in what they are doing. And I do think, as much as it is very difficult to build an individual fan base as a player right now, I think there was a similar sentiment behind NRG winning last year. So I don't necessarily think it is overall bad for NA, because a lot of the tide that I've seen in the community is already shifting to supporting teams at least being able to promote some of their own talent from NACL to the LCS. Not because it means we're going to do super well internationally, but just because it means we can develop these players, they can have a fan base within their own region, etc. As for it's going to end up with our best players being poached, honestly, that's the best fucking advertisement for NA that we've had in forever. Like, let's fucking go. If JoJo gets somehow poached to LEC and LCK and manages to do somewhat well, like, you guys
are crazy. That would be so fucking depressing. Are you kidding me?
It would be depressing. It would
be depressing, but it would also be hilarious.
It would be so. I'd be watching different regions. It'd be so fun. It would be really fun.
No, we need people to watch our region, guys. We don't need people to watch.
I would still watch our region no matter what. It's my job, Travis. So, regardless,
would either murder both of us, Cubby. You know that, right? Well, right now, he just wants to come through the screen.
I might be the deciding vote here, which is pretty much. I think that C9, like, for everything that I praise TL for, I cannot endorse C9 going to MSI, because this team, regardless of the names on the roster as a team, they were straight ass. This team was not a real team. They refused to play the map on mid game, right? Like, everything we talked about with, like, TL's macro and everything, was like, man, like, TL, the way they play map, like, they have an idea of, like, how to actually play the game. And we would just watch C9 literally spawn in and play solo queue. And, like, I don't want to see that team go international, right? Like, that wasn't a real team. Like, they did not play as a team. And for me, like, C9 have fundamental issues. Regardless of that, I think it's better to send new players international. I think that APA and Yon going to Worlds was great last year. NRG going to Worlds was great last year. I think Busio and Masu going to MSI is going to be great for them. You learn so much when you spawn into the one scrim you get against HLE Viper and just get clapped, you know? Like, that is an eye-opening experience if you talk to a lot of these players. I mean, JoJo said it himself, like, back when he went with EG. And that really helps, I think, like just basic learning curves. They're gonna level up the most from these experiences. The ones that haven't actually gone through it, right?
How did that help NRG this split? How did that help JoJo this split? Like you say this, but then we've set these guys there, and then it's not like they come over here and like continue on their progression.
That's true, but also C9's filled with the players that we all usually send over there, and they were just bad. So, like, I don't know.
I am not trying to suggest we should send a bad team there, right? Like, yes. I am more in line with the Caller's premise, which is, or part of the Caller's premise, which is like, hey, from like a brand perspective, from like a representation of the league perspective, like, it would have been nice to have C9 be one of the two teams. I'm not suggesting we don't send new players or anything like that, and I want to be clear. I really like the fact that we are sending FlyQuest and Team Liquid. Like, I am kind of happy that Team Liquid beat C9, especially given the narratives around Team Liquid and also how disappointing C9 had been. But like, I can acknowledge that LCS fandom, because the teams have not done a great job. FlyQuest has been in this league for fucking ever, and they are only now starting to build like a significant fan base. And that's on the back of winning, by the way. It's not on the back of like brand building. And so I can
they've had some small wins there this split though.
Yeah, no, they're getting better, but I'm just like, I don't think that they would have like the majority of their fandom is growing because of because of their performances. So anyway, I don't like. I can acknowledge that it is good for the league whenever our most popular team is getting out there and doing stuff, and not just like running it down and playing like their solo queue, while also acknowledging like that it's great that Team Liquid is going, for instance.
Yeah. I mean, the brand stuff, like, sending your most popular team international, I'm sure that would be great. But, you know, I can't argue with that. Like, I think C9, they are the most established, and that would be great. But, hey, I mean, they weren't the best team, and it's an opportunity for these other teams to cash in. So I hope they make the most of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, I hope they do too.
Yeah.
So
I can't argue with that, right? But no, I don't know. C9 were just so infuriating to watch. Like, I actually really resonated with what Bwipo said in the sense that, like, I mean, he thought that those 5 guys would step up because in a sense I think they were playing for their jobs, like some of them, like for sure. And they just did not step up, and it was really too bad because I do have a lot of respect for those 5 guys and what they've been able to accomplish, but man, that was just not a team this split, you know? They really just were not a team.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm what is our last call about C9?
No, it's about Impact.
Okay, wait, really quickly.
Yeah.
What changes do you guys think they make?
For me, you have to, I feel like I cannot explain Fudge's Olaf games without getting into irrational behavior. Because like the fact that he's taking TP, building Ravenous Hydra, and then TPing to every fight, like I swear to God, if he doesn't TP, like does he get like thrown into a locker like in practice, or like is he just have no faith in himself to carry? Like I don't know, and I don't know like Fudge for that, you know. Like I feel like there was just zero faith in Fudge. Like whether he didn't have faith in himself, the team didn't have faith in him, or like if he didn't play for the team, then he was just like bullied. Like I really just don't know, right? So I think that something on that team for me has to change because it was clear that running it this split, things did not get better. Like there was just not improvement. So I do think you have to make changes. I think that if I'm C9, I think that I would 100% change Fudge, and I would look into changing Blabber JoJo. I think that those
really?
Are the two yes.
So I think Blabber JoJo and Berserker are like super safe.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Those are arguably three of the most valuable pieces to have in NA. But for me, Blabber JoJo just did not work. And I think that C9, because they didn't make MSI, JoJo's contract is the biggest in the league. And Blabber is C9. And there could be like a real decision for them to make in terms of splitting them up.
Yeah, but like that was 3.
So,
I don't think you let go of one of those 2 pieces when you have had like only 3 months with them, right?
Somewhat true, but like again, it didn't get better within that time. So yeah. I don't know. I
don't know. I think you at least see out the season. On the other hand, so I feel like, and I like him a lot, but I feel like Vulcan should feel very nervous right now because I think that him and Berserker did not seem to gel super well. And I think that Berserker has a lot of cred on that team and probably a lot of influence. Sven is still looking for work right now. And if he can't find an 80 position, it is, and Berserker's like, I want Sven back. Like, it's really hard for me to imagine a world where Jack doesn't go to Sven and be like, all right, you had a split off. You did some content. Come back home, you know? Like, I don't know. I worry for Vulcan. And by the way, I really like Vulcan. I think he's a really good player. I don't understand why he's had like 3 ADs recently that have all seemed to struggle with him as their support. And it's a worrying trend to quote a great man.
I will also say that this offseason there is less money and the buyouts are small, but I think that overall we're not going to see a lot of moves.
Oh, I agree. I don't think we'll see a lot of moves this offseason, but I feel like C9 makes some change. I feel like they make some change. I haven't heard anything, but I don't. Emily, you've been suspiciously quiet.
No. I mean, I think obviously as chat has said, like the way off, like I think wishful thinking rumor is Thanatos replacing Fudge. But I actually think I have a very cold take on this, or maybe it's a hot take, in that they probably don't change anything and potentially make a coaching change, because sometimes, unfortunately, it's the coach that ends up falling on that sword, regardless of whether it was their fault or not. And again, I don't know enough about Mithy's relationship with the players to know how much, but I just think sometimes when someone's in that position, we see it in traditional sports all the time. Unfortunately, he's going to end up being the one who ends up, taking this one, and they're going to have another split with a different coach on the same roster. I think that's actually the most likely permutation of what happens with C9, is that they just give it another go with this roster. Who knows though? And again, like I actually absolutely do not want this to come off as it's Mithy's fault, because I'll make it abundantly clear, I actually don't think it is.
It's the opposite of anything, yeah.
But like I think that unfortunately sometimes if you are a head coach of a team and they do really well and they don't necessarily, or they do really poorly rather, and they don't necessarily compared to expectations, and they don't necessarily want to make changes on the roster, they want to see if this roster can develop into something. I think that's who usually ends up falling on the sword, unfortunately. Yeah. And it's something that I'm pretty sure most coaches know is a factor in terms of their jobs, which is not always fair. But again, not an esports thing. It's it happens literally everywhere. The only other thing I'll say is like, the most frustrating thing about this roster is just how they could not figure out how to play as a team. Kind of like what Cubby said, right? Like there was that one series where Blabber did such a good job of tracking River, and he was playing alongside with JoJo, and I was casting it, and I was like, fuck yes, like this is the mid-jungle synergy that I actually wanted to see from you guys the entire split. And then it was literally there for that one game, or that one series, and that was it. And I am very sad about that, because I think obviously you could look at their play styles and say this was never going to work, but you could also look at their play styles and be like, look, JoJo has been very vocal about how in going up against Faker and Xiaohu, he really wants to be able to play the sides more. He wants to be able to play without as many resources. And Blabber would be a very good jungler around which to employ that strategy. So yeah, I hope this roster iteration, if they do decide to stay together, can figure out some way of playing as a team, because it was incredibly apparent that if they did not smash lane, they would not win, right? Like if they did not smash the early game, they didn't win. And if you look at the playstyle that they generally wanted to employ, I feel like people often point to T1 and they're like, well, that playstyle is viable. And yes, it is viable when you have a mid who is just insane at reading the map and does a ton for his team. And you have better objective setups than C9 had. And you're actually able to meet in the mid game with better lane assignments and good team fights. And C9 did not have any of those things. And it made me really sad to watch because, like Cubby said, I really like all those players and I want them to succeed.
Well, I guess we'll see how things go, but we do have one more caller, so we're going to wrap up things with this one. Thank you so much for the call. Anything you want to shout out here at the end?
Yeah, I would shout out you three. Also, if you're looking for analytical content, making the rounds is really fun, and also Cubby's VOD videos are great. And then also, last shout out is to FlyQuest content. They did a series called Inventory with all their players, and it's great to meet all of them. And I thought that was really great content.
Yeah,
thank you.
I really like that.
Is making the grounds like a small little community thing? What is? I've never heard of this program before.
Get out of here, Travis.
All right. Thanks, caller. We'll catch you next time.
Right, thanks. Bye.
All right.
Thank you.
We got one last caller to go, and then we'll be winding things down. Off Cubby goes to get them. Thanks so much, Emily. I'm glad we were able to get you back on the show.
Yeah, same. No, it's been a fun
it.
time. It's never because I don't want to come on. It's literally because I have a scheduling conflict every Monday night.
Yeah. No, I get it. Hey, it's I assume seanatonin. Is that who it is?
Yeah,
Hi. Discord hides names,
Hello.
but I recognize the profile picture. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Buffalo, New York.
Buffalo, New York. What do you want to talk about on the show?
I just want to say that I think it's time that we really start having the conversation about Impact being the GOAT of LCS.
Impact is the GOAT of LCS. Go ahead and elaborate.
So when we did like the 10-year anniversary and stuff like that, it's all about Doublelift and Bjergsen and everything like that. Obviously, those are the two ones. But like now with this championship, Impact is solely in second place, right behind Doublelift. And if they somehow win one more, whether that's in summer or if he wins on another team, which he's shown that he can do on multiple teams, and different iterations of different rosters with different firepower, that I think that he has been viewed a lot more of like as a plug and play sort of player, but I don't think from a fan perspective you actually get to see how important he is to a team's success. And it's kind of sometimes written off by either like EG, some of the rookies, right? Or even in TL, like some of the NA talent where it's, again, a mid and a AD carry talent with like a veteran support and a veteran jungle with Impact and top side. Crazy how that worked twice. But I think that Impact really needs to kind of get his flowers, and we need to start talking about him getting recognition for probably being the GOAT of NA.
Well, first off, we need to stretch this call a little bit because we just got raided by LCS Challengers. Thank you, LCS Challengers, for the raid. That's very generous of you. Welcome, everybody that's here. We're about 2 hours into the show, so we're on our final take, but we're talking about if Impact is the GOAT of North America, and our caller's evidence is that he's in second place behind Doublelift, which I feel like when I think of the term GOAT, you think greatest of all time. And
yeah,
second
well,
is usually not something
people were putting, Bjergsen up there, and he's not second anymore, but they were still comparing him to Doublelift. So your take is your argument is with the crowd, not with me.
So one thing I will say is I really feel like, and this is a little bit because of his personality and the fact that he's just not in as much content and that type of thing, I do think Impact is incredibly undervalued by the league. And I think that a lot of his contributions to his teams are not directly in the top lane, but also just what he's able to do in terms of bringing expertise, knowledge, and, just a general game understanding that a lot of other people don't have to the teams that he's on. And he still fucking cares. Like, that's what's incredible about this guy, is that he's just stayed committed to winning for so long that, I don't know, it's really cool to see. I don't think he's the greatest of all time, but I like this take because I think it is drawing attention to somebody who deserves more attention, especially after winning again this week. Emily or Cubby?
I'll take this next just because I was the one that brought up the idea of having the discussion on the desk with Jensen and Impact in terms of like mentioning them. But that being said, I think the biggest thing of looking at Impact's entire career is that he came over in 2015. And when he initially came over, it was on Team Impulse, and then the old NRG team that was kind of a disaster. Rip OQ. But anyway, that's a weird random aside that no one is going to get anymore. I think the biggest thing working against him, in my opinion, when you're looking at Doublelift and Bjergsen, and additionally, like I've said this in content publicly, and I believe we did a desk segment on it at the beginning of the year or last year, or I said on Dive, I don't remember. But right now, between the two of them, I am on the Doublelift side. I think the big thing with Impact is his longevity is insane. But when he first came in the league, and again, this is not his fault, but he did kind of have a rough entry point in terms of coming over from SKT and immediately going on to Team Impulse, who finished 4th in both the regular season and that playoffs run, and then 3rd in summer. I think the actual like really big part of his career in NA really started with the C9 teams, and even then they didn't win LCS titles. It was more like Impact was the guy who was getting them through regional finals, right? To qualify for Worlds.
Yeah.
Like he was like dragging. Yeah, like his Gnar, I still remember his Gnar plays.
Top
like
guy came to be,
yeah, those were insane, right? And so I think Impact, in terms of when you have a conversation and you mention outliers and you're working your way up to saying who you think the greatest of all time in the LCS is, I think you mention Impact. But unfortunately, I think because of the breadth of the other two's accomplishments and longevity of their careers at the top of the table, I think that's where Impact unfortunately falls into like a 3rd place position. And it could be something where Impact ends up somehow the LCS, we survive, we make it through esports winter, he plays another 5 years and it's just insane. That would be great. I wish nothing but the best for Impact. I have so much respect for him. I love him. I love his commitment. He's amazing. But in terms of greatest of all time, that's where I think we are in terms of mentioning Impact. I think he deserves an honorable mention before discussing whether it's Bjergsen or Doublelift, unfortunately.
So, real quick before Cubby gets in here, I also think that it's some way, like, they talked about it a bit, like, on the broadcast about, like, this guy has a Jack skin, but we always talk about him as, like, a tank player, or, like, a weak side tank player. I feel like he can fit and play whatever he needs. Top is not the flashy role, right? It's almost never going to be the role that gets MVP votes, right, or wins MVP. And I actually think, going back, because I've been watching LCS since like its inception, so I understand the OQ reference, but I also think that like that NRG roster, not NRG, the Impact roster would have been really good if it wasn't for like 2 things, which was like obviously the Zhao like boosting kind of scandal, and then also like the next following years when the import rule came in. So like him and Rush on the same team would have continued to be great. But it's he will fit the mold of what the team needs. So like when they need a tank, he's like, yeah, sure, I can do that. So I can fit the other people's needs. And I liken it to like a really good point guard on the floor. So like you can either dish the ball to the people who need the resources, or you can take it yourself when you need to. And he does have the top die sort of stuff. So I think like that's like the one thing that he has going against him that is just like the nature of League of Legends. But we shouldn't just not think about that when we are considering him as an honorable mention.
I liken him more to like a center fielder or a or to like a
who's the center fielder for the Dodgers,
or like a goalie. I think he's kind of like a goalie in a lot of ways. Or
who's the goalie for the
like
LA
a 50-yard
Galaxy?
dash, a 50-yard dash person. I think also he's kind of like that.
Travis doesn't follow sports.
And neither do most of our audience, but everybody always just insists on putting these fucking sports metaphors.
Well, it's okay. Is Jad and Cubby the same person? They both like, golf, and they both make sports reference on broadcast. So same person? Or
I ask myself that every day.
Yeah, I'm working with Cubby on it. I don't think I'll ever be able to get through Jad. Just know you'll never see a "Let's Go Golfing with Cubby" thing show up on my channel. Anyway. Yeah, I don't know, Cubby. You were gonna jump in here with the sports reference, I'm sure.
No, I do like kind of want to talk about just the context of Impact, because like when I do look back on the history of the game, the only like extraordinarily dominant top laner I can remember in the first like 5 seasons is probably Marin on that season 5 run, and part of it is just like top lane you were on your own. And the meta very quickly became how fast can you TP bot, and mid was just OP in earlier seasons. Like the Riot's still trying to like find ways to nerf mid, right? I think that the biggest compliment I can give Impact is that he is probably in the top 5 conversation for the GOAT. For me, it's like I think that the whole there are 2 GOATs, Bjergsen and Doublelift. I think half of that is because people liked Bjergsen a lot, and Doublelift was a little bit controversial when if you look at the resumes and what was accomplished, Doublelift's just the GOAT. And that hasn't changed yet. And I think the other biggest compliment that I'll give Impact, and this is a hot take that's kind of not mine, it's also, like, I've heard Kelsey say this, and I will agree with it, is I don't think Impact will ever get the credit that he deserves for being as good as he has been because he played in NA. And for me, Impact is a top 10 top laner of all time. I think given the longevity and just like what Impact has done throughout this game, like he's never going to get the credit that he deserves for being an all-time great player because he is a role player in NA. But this guy is so good and has been so good for so long. And like I can't say enough nice things about Impact in his gameplay. So I don't know. I think that's really what it comes down to for me with Impact.
Yeah. No, I really like the call because he's in a lot of ways just a very unsung hero. I know that obviously people will talk about him, but I think the general community doesn't consider him much, especially whenever, even, and I understand why, and I think it's quite good that like APA and Yon are getting so much attention and Umpty after Sunday's match, but like I do feel like it's really good to recognize Impact for his impact. Thanks so much, Seanatonin, for the call. Anything that you would like to...
Raz on desk.
What about him?
Oh no, he said it twice unironically. Like first he said the core of the team without while like citing Core JJ.
Yes.
And then said Impact's impact.
I say it ironically also, though. So
Leo,
Raz just saying that stuff is that's just him being a goofball.
Leo, I see you in the chat asking whether figure skating is a real sport. I'll fight you later.
All right. Seanatonin, anything you want to shout out here at the end?
I want to shout out all of y'all. Loved Cubby's streams. I've loved the Kelsey and Emily content. Also, Emily on broadcast this year was just absolutely fire, both in casting and in like the lounge sort of stuff. Shout out to all the sponsors for Hotline League. Big shout out to NACL for the raid, and also just because we love supporting Tier 2 and Tier 3. And it looks like most of your chat does watch sports, Travis, so you should kind of, succumb to the people's will and put in some more stuff, maybe golfing with Cubby.
Oh my God.
Wait, Travis, if I put together a figure skating routine, will you film it and put it on your channel?
No, I think the Riot Features team is willing to do that before finals. That's the hype content that I like to see on my my YouTube channel before finals.
Wait. Oh, okay. Can I just say Malfiar said? Malfiar said maybe not Ice Dance. The scoring is ridiculous. Oh my god. Big agree. I have so many problems.
Thank you so much for bringing me on. Shout out to Greg Adler. Love that guy. All right.
Have a good one. All right.
Travis is so annoyed with me right now.
No,
Doesn't it take you back to
I was about to say, it is literally
podcast, and you're just like, Emily.
Rift reaction. The nice thing about Rift reaction was that we filmed it in my office and we didn't have cameras. And so you would go on these rants and I would just start spinning my finger being like, Emily, you've been talking for 5 minutes straight on a 30-minute podcast. Like we have to move on to another topic. Although I will say, Emily, one thing, maybe I shouldn't be saying this publicly, but I'm going to anyway. One thing I've noticed that has changed a lot for you, and I noticed it on the broadcast, but it's definitely noticeable on this, was you would layer a lot of your opinions in like 7 caveats, where you would be like, well, and I really want to talk about Team Liquid, and I know that people are going to say this, and this is also something, and I'm not trying to take away from... And really, if you go back, I know in 2013, and then you'd say your take, and you've just leveled up a lot in a way that I don't see very many people level up in the space. And since even in the last couple of years since we've done the show, it's been fun to see you get yourself out there a little bit more. So I don't know, it's always fun to see you grow. And
thank you.
Your casting this split has been phenomenal. Like I honestly just wish.
Has it actually? Because I think I'm so mediocre.
No,
like,
I
don't think
love
I've been
it.
Bad, but I think I've been like fine.
I think especially in a TriCast, it's easy for you to fit in well there. I've consistently been. I've talked to just people that are around when I'm watching the games in your casting, and I'm like, I really wish that Emily was just like in the standard cast rotation, because I think you are very good at that. So, yeah.
I
would say
you after
credit to my peers.
Yeah, I did ping you after the Jet TriCast, and I was like, you guys bounced off each other really well.
Yeah,
that was good. And I mean, I'm an info enjoyer, so if people give good info, I'm always a fan, and you have good info, so.
Yeah, that 100%. Like, I think you just balance a lot of our current talent very well. So I don't know. I'm very hopeful that you'll get to do more of it in the summer, because I think it's a very nice, I don't know, synergy of a lot of the different voices there. So
I'm really fortunate that I have people who trust me and are willing to give me like really direct feedback, because that's something I'm just always looking for, right? So
yeah. Well, okay, so that is the show. Folks, if you joined in through the raid, please consider giving us a follow. We do these shows normally we do them every Monday at 7 p.m. Pacific. We did it Tuesday this week because Cubby was working on the NACL broadcast, so I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with his work there. But it is a call-in show. We love to have folks call in. So if you have a take, and we occasionally take an NACL call, usually within the context of how it relates to LCS. One thing we didn't talk, by the way, one call we should have had tonight. I don't know if you saw it in there, Cubby, because somebody said they wanted to do it. Was pointing out that C9 and TL and Fly, the only 2 teams in the finals, also the only 2 LCS teams still with Challenger or Academy teams.
I do want to shout and highlight that APA gave them a shout out in his post-game interview, including Romer. And I also know something I brought up on broadcast I was actually a little bit concerned about for Fly C in their final was that they were scrimming FlyQuest to help them prep as well. And that's definitely a situation where, your Challengers team is still in service of your main team. They did fine. I mean, they dominated their final, and that team is really good. And we've had discussions before in the past where I remember talking about how Spawn's TOA squad would have potentially been like an LCS playoff team. And I'm not going to go that far with like the FlyQuest Challengers roster, but I will say they're really good. And the biggest compliment I can give them is that with how competitive LCS this was a split, if you put them in there, I don't know if they're last or not. That team is very good, and there are 3 legitimate LCS players that would have been on EG in there, and a couple others like Quad is a freak. He's really good. He had the highest CSD in mid out of any tournament that happened in spring. That's a fun one. So he was pretty dominant. But yeah. Anyway, shout out to those guys.
Yeah. No, I mean, so we if folks want to tune in, feel free to follow the channel because we'd love to have you here. And if you can't get enough of Cubby on the NACL, he's over here too talking about LCS stuff. So
I'm less of a stick of a mud here, you know.
True.
Yeah.
Also, if you want to hear about the NACL take, Kelsey and I talk about it as our first topic on Making the Rounds, which should be out.
Oh, that's your show.
Question mark.
Huge.
Oh, you do Making the Rounds.
Get out of here.
All right. Well, we are going to get out of here. Actually, I'm going to stick around because I've got a bounty and I'm going to hang out and stream for a little bit with folks, and then I'll probably raid Cubby if Cubby you're going to be streaming.
No, I am taking the day off. I will stream VOD reviews of the promo tournament tomorrow on my channel. I'm going to do it. I'll try and do it before and after broadcast, but I've got to get up early to do the jungle. And I'm going to be honest, I'm exhausted last night. I went to karaoke with some of the players that were competing, and we had a blast. And we stepped out of the karaoke room to talk about League for an hour. So
nice.
We were true gamers.
Well, Cubby, link your.
That's a perfect night, according to me.
It was.
Someone
we
who
had.
also
I had
just does
so
not
much
shut
fun.
the fuck up about League of Legends.
It was me, Chad, Shaden, and Yuji with like me.
Oh, that's a fun.
Niles.
That's a very fun group.
Theos was there too, like who coached those guys, like OG. It was. I didn't sing a single song. I got a drink and I stepped out and we all talked about League. It was so fun. We had so much fun. And shout out to Shaden and Yuji, who are both really, really good junglers. And like, it was really fun hearing them in Chad talk. It was so fun. So yeah. And Shaden's very personal, actually, and like a really nice guy, which I know his interviews are kind of troll, but he was really fun to talk to as well. So yeah. Anyway.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, so you won't be streaming. What? Link your Twitch in the chat because people were asking about it.
Yeah. My Twitch, everything is CubbyXX, and I will say I have to get a couple VODs up because I have to stitch one together. But my goal for the rest of the night is to get the rest of my LCS VOD reviews up. I like the thing with me on that is my homework's not perfect. Like I'm not perfect. Like even I think the game 3, how I read the Baron was actually wrong looking back in review. Because I missed that, like, if Boostio dropped Equalizer, maybe they could finish it before, like, but Yawn Poke was good. Either way, it's been fun to kind of do the homework this split, and at least keeps me honest, and it's been a lot of fun to, like, have some people hop into. It's more fun to do it with friends, I'm sure you know as well, Emily.
Anything else you want to shout out, though, Cubby?
Just you, Travis. I appreciate you, and
Thank
Emily
you.
as well. It was a lot of fun doing Challengers League this split. Shout out to the promotion tournament still going on. We're going to find our other 2 teams to join us out of the 10 by the end of this week. And, yeah, it's fun seeing Bradley play mid again. I won't go too deep into that, but that's,
Ooh.
yeah, real ones will know. He
Let's
was very
go.
good. Yeah.
I still remember doing the collegiate thing where they gave us a fact sheet, and Bradley's like, he's not only looking for a team, but he's looking for a girlfriend. But also that was when Gwen. This is back in like 2021. When Gwen was like absolutely broken.
Yep.
And Bradley was just spamming it mid, and teams kept letting it through for some reason, even though he would just destroy teams. That's fun to see him back in mid.
I had to coach
Emily, anything you want to shout out? I guess you promoted Making the Rounds, but anything else?
Yeah, shout out Making the Rounds just because I do that with Kelsey every week. I know we've been doing it on Tuesdays lately. Usually the idea is that we're streaming right after either LEC or LPL end, depending on which one we're watching that morning. These past few weeks, I've had a bunch of stuff to do on Mondays, and this week I'm going to be flying back from Massachusetts on this coming Monday, so it's also going to be this coming Tuesday. But yeah, I'll probably be dipping into maybe a few of her streams and hanging out and doing a bunch of prep, looking at teams going to MSI. So maybe I'll stream that. I always say I'm going to, and then I get 2 in my own head because it would not be a very entertaining stream. Because it would literally just be me doing like jungle.
I stream the show every week, and it's not a very entertaining stream.
Do it,
like,
Emily.
I don't think that you should stop yourself from doing so.
I'll hop in. We can shoot the shit about teams too in the chat. See what's up.
Like, why are they doing this?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I might try to do that if I have time / stop being. I don't know if laziness is the right word for it, since I'm still doing the work. I'm just doing it and not publicizing it.
Well,
yeah.
Regardless, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm glad we were able to make this work. You were a great guest to have on after the finals, so really appreciate it. Thanks everyone for watching. I have some more content that's going up this week. I'm probably not going to make like a dedicated video or anything about this, but I will say that I think it's pretty Jover for me to go to MSI this year. Was not able to secure a sponsor. Will be the first time that there's like a major league event that I am not at, not counting, I guess, the pandemic stuff. So it does mean that I've got like 2 months of figuring out what I'm going to do for content. But I have some fun ideas, so it's not like content will just disappear from the channel. But just thought I'd mention that for the real ones who stay at the end. But yeah, from what I understand, I'm not the only member of the media that's probably gonna have to skip out on MSI. It is like pretty expensive. You have to figure out visa stuff. You have to lock in sponsor stuff like way early. So it's but that's fine. But I'll just be here making content for you in LA and not spending a fuck ton of money traveling. So yeah, but would have gone if I had a sponsor who wanted to help support that. So, but other than that, thanks everybody for watching this mega long episode, and we'll catch you all next Monday at 7:00 Pacific. Right, Cubby? You can do Monday?
I can do Monday.
Monday at 7:00 Pacific. We'll see you then.